a favorable ground or create a kind of a foundation on which the talks can be held, and that ecosystem is required to make big decisions during such meetings. And of course, Americans are very sensitive to the Chinese electronic equipment, especially when it is used in the telecommunication and, as you rightly said, the routers and even the electric trucks, because that will seriously affect the American electric vehicle industry. So I think these steps have been taken as a preemptive steps to tone down the tension, to build a favorable groundswell so that the two leaders, when they meet in a harmonious atmosphere and they are able to take the trade issues forward. But I like to make two important points here. Firstly, we need to look at the larger strategic picture, and that is the national security strategy of America, which has clearly states that as far as America is concerned, China is the main adversary. But at the same time, it has been stated that they will not like to go into conflict with China, but resolve the issues on the trade front. But at the military front, they like to confront China both in the Western Pacific and the other part of the region. So that is point number one. And point number two is Trump, his trade war has not gone as per his expectation. So therefore, he like to make some mid-course correction and ensure that some of the issues that like bans on the electronic and telecom equipment is softened up, so that the trade issues are more smoothened out and the tension is alleviated.
All right. General, thanks very much for your comment and for joining us here at NewsX World. And we now move on. Viewers, let's tell you that Beijing is now urging Tokyo to protect the rights and safety of Chinese crew members after Japanese authorities seized a Chinese fishing boat and arrested its captain in waters near Japan. The incident took place off Nagasaki, where Japanese officials say the vessel failed to stop for inspection in Japan's exclusive economic zone and was subsequently detained. China's foreign ministry spokesperson called on Japan to strictly respect the China-Japan fisheries agreement, enforce laws fairly, and ensure the safety and legitimate rights of the crew of the Chinese. And shifting focus now, US President Donald Trump has also taken to his social media platform Truth Social to declare that relations between the US and Venezuela are extraordinary, highlighting renewed cooperation under Venezuela's interim leadership. Trump praised dealings with Delcy Rodriguez and her representatives, saying that oil is beginning to flow again and that large amounts of money, unseen for many years, will soon benefit the Venezuelan people. Trump also commended Secretary of State Marco Rubio and US representatives for their efforts, but stressed that only those approved by the US State Department can act on behalf of the government, rejecting any unofficial involvement by private individuals. He specifically noted that Harry Sargent III has no authority to represent the United States in Venezuela policy, despite media reports about his ties to the oil sector. And moving on to cover some news in connection to the Epstein files, Goldman Sachs top lawyer Kathy Ruemmler has announced her resignation following revelations about her connections to the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Investigative files released by the US Department of Justice show that Ruemmler received gifts from Epstein and offered him reputation management advice. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon confirmed her resignation and praised her work. Ruemmler, who served as a White House counsel under President Obama, said the media attention had become a distraction. She will step down at the end of June. All right, joining me now in this discussion is Keith Vaz. He's former British minister, joins us from Goa in India. Mr. Vaz, it's good to see you here at NewsX World. Another resignation coming in the aftermath of the Epstein files that have now become public. Goldman Sachs top employee Ruemmler has offered a resignation, but Lutnick, Trump's Commerce Secretary, is also under intense pressure. Let's first talk about the consequences of the files in the United States. Then we can also discuss the latest in the UK.
Well, the main issue at the moment is anyone who is seen to have been associated in any way with Jeffrey Epstein and appears in the files is tainted in some way or the other. There's a difference between being mentioned in passing. There's a lot of emails that talk about people like Emmanuel Macron, what he's doing, who the governor of the Bank of England is, all that kind of stuff. They are not actually being dragged into this, because if they all resign, there'd be nobody left in the world of governance. Everyone who ever goes to Davos seems to have met this man. So from that point of view, there is a difference between being mentioned and having some kind of association, advice giving, whatever. And this is the problem that has occurred for this particular official. Because she was involved in some way, we don't know how, and we have to be careful what we say, she felt it was necessary to resign. But what it's doing, Kirti, is building up a momentum to when the final files are released and the name of Donald Trump will come up for sure. It's already in the files, and therefore he's not going anywhere, as we know. So we're still awaiting, but it's a build-up of steam that eventually will allow the dam to burst. But that is to come, I think.
All right. Now, some questions were also raised to Kathy, where she refused to answer. The questions were whether this was related to, sex trafficking or about the involvement of underage people. Those are, again, serious charges, but Kathy has offered no response, only a resignation. How much is this going to help the investigation?
Well, people not answering questions, as you know from one of the great news outlets of the world, NewsX, most politicians don't answer questions. And if we're under pressure, people don't tend to do so. Rare is the person who gives you the answer that you want. By the way, I'm an exception. Whenever you ask me a question, Kirti, I do try to respond immediately. So I don't think we can read anything in this because there's so much litigation. America is full of litigation, as you know. There are lawyers around every corner. So people are being very careful what they say. So I don't think we should read anything into this on this particular matter. So we should be very cautious about doing things that are based on people not answering questions. But she's obviously taken legal advice. Most of them do. Most of them have at least one, sometimes two or three lawyers. And therefore it is important that we recognize that that isn't in itself an answer. Eventually you will get more answers coming out. The only place where you can definitely get answers is at a congressional committee. What's interesting is I'm not sure what's supposed to have happened about the appearance of Bill and Hillary Clinton. They were due to appear this week, I think. They've asked for an open hearing in Washington. The Republicans have asked for a closed hearing. I don't know whether you know anything more than I do, but I think we're all awaiting that. That's going to be the big testimony day, which will be essential in terms of how you get to the truth of what has happened.
Now, in the UK, Mandelson was also in touch with Epstein. That's what the allegations are. And that's also, of course, raising calls for the resignation of Keir Starmer. Do talk to us about how the UK politics is shaping up post these revelations.
Well, as you see, I'm not actually in Britain at the moment. I'm in Goa, but I've just come from Britain. It is like I've never seen before. Cabinet ministers either supporting the Prime Minister or coming out against the Prime Minister, and coming out against the Prime Minister is just being silent in political terms. If you're not for him, then you're automatically against him. Keir Starmer survived this week, but what's going to be really interesting is when the final assessments come out about Lord Mandelson, whether he overrode those decisions. Now, as we know, Kirti, his chief of staff has resigned, taking full responsibility for what has happened. But at the end of the day, these decisions are not taken by the chief of staff. They're taken by the Prime Minister himself. So his day of reckoning, if you like, has not come. And these kind of phrases, full of integrity, decent, all this kind of stuff. All very important words. He is all those things, Keir Starmer. He served on a committee with me. I chaired the Home Affairs Committee, and his first job in government was with me, actually, when he sat on my committee. I didn't think he'd last very long before he was promoted, and I was right. But he's a good man and a decent man. But you can be a good man and a decent man, but you can also be not a particularly good politician. And that's the problem. This is high politics. This is the kind of stuff we saw at the time of Boris Johnson's resignation, the election of Liz Truss, then Rishi Sunak. This kind of chaos seems to be occurring on a regular basis. I'm not sure why it is. Maybe the only person who could ever be Prime Minister of this country is Mother Teresa, someone who has been in holy orders, who's not spoken to anyone for years, because somewhere along the line you're going to speak to somebody who's going to get into trouble, and you're going to have to give an answer to that. That's the problem we have. That is the nature of politics, I'm afraid. The only person who seems to defy the odds is Donald Trump. He's different. An American president is different from a British prime minister. An American president is very difficult to get rid of an American president. It's also very difficult to get rid of a sitting Labour prime minister. But as we've seen, the plates
Have you
can
heard
move.
of Shabana Mahmood? She is now under intense spotlight after these calls for Starmer's resignation. Would you want to talk about her credentials?
To be what? Prime Minister?
That's what the reports are suggesting.
Well, I think anyone who holds any of the big offices of state is eligible to be Prime Minister. Anyone. The Foreign Secretary, the Home Secretary, the Chancellor, and the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister. I know Shabana. I think she is an extraordinarily able person. However, I don't think that at this moment in time, and by the way, there is no vacancy, but if Keir Starmer decides to resign, I think the Labour Party will look for someone who's got a lot of experience. And I have a feeling that's probably going to be either Ed Miliband or possibly Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, or Hilary Benn. They're going to look for someone with a lot of experience to do this job. Because if you believe the opinion polls, then Labour is going to lose the next election. So what they will be looking for is not necessarily a Starmer Mark II. Remember, Keir has not been in Parliament for that long. He's very able, very good at his job, but he's only been in politics for a very short time, whereas someone like Ed Miliband has been in there for years and years and has been to many crises. I wasn't someone who supported Ed Miliband when he ran for leader. I supported his brother David Miliband. I think there were a whole lot of people, but there is no vacancy. Until he says, I am resigning, this can carry on and on and on and on. And Keir Starmer is not going anywhere. You do not go into Parliament, fight an election, become the leader of the party, then become Prime Minister to give it up in 30 seconds. Those who think he's going to go tomorrow, you have to remove them dragging and screaming. Okay.
All right.
They
No,
give it
we'll
up.
watch out for that if that does happen. 30 seconds or more. Thanks very much, Mr. Walls, for joining us. And viewers, we now proceed. Now, some breaking news developments coming in from Denmark, which has announced it will provide 5 F-35 fighter jets to NATO's Arctic Sentry mission. This move, confirmed by Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen, aims to strengthen NATO's presence in the Arctic region. The decision follows growing tensions within the alliance, particularly after the US president's proposal to acquire Greenland from Denmark. Poulsen emphasized that the contribution reflects Denmark's active role in Arctic and North Atlantic security. He is also expecting the US to contribute to the NATO mission, highlighting a collaborative approach ahead of the Munich Security Conference. And now proceeding once again, viewers, US President Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social praising Attorney General Pam Bondi for doing a great job at a recent hearing about the Jeffrey Epstein case. He says the hearing showed, according to him, that he was fully cleared of Russia type accusations, and that Democrats, especially big donors and politicians, were the ones proven guilty of wrongdoing. Trump criticized Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, saying Massie looked foolish and is losing support in Kentucky, comparing him to Liz Cheney. Trump also claimed that people only paid attention to Epstein when it might hurt him politically, not even when Epstein was alive. He argues Democrats are trying to distract from Republican successes and suggests they should focus instead on issues like border security and policies on trans people. Viewers, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Tech on NewsX World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs and trends from around the globe. As the entertainment and social media industries rapidly evolve, artificial intelligence technology is taking center stage, reshaping everything from film production to influencer marketing. With major players like Amazon, MGM Studios, Disney, Warner Music and YouTube leading the charge, AI is not only transforming content creation, but also opening new opportunities and challenges across global markets. From virtual influencers to AI-generated music, the impact of these advancements is felt everywhere. They are transforming everything from traditional TV markets to the rise of digital platforms. Today, we take a closer look at the latest developments and their implications for the industry. To discuss this and more, joining us now is Darren Nino Di Stefano, a senior industry consultant in entertainment and social media. He has managed portfolios for major brands and broadcasters working on content and distribution strategies for emerging platforms. Thank you very much for joining us, Darren. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get straight into this. With Amazon MGM Studios launching a dedicated AI unit for film and TV production, how do you see this impacting content workflows and spending in markets like India's TV sector, which generated $7.4 billion in FY25?
Well, MGM Studios, which is actually owned by Amazon, has recently launched a unit dedicated for AI. The objective is to mainly come up with tools for film and TV production, ultimately to save costs. So this was already seen in House of David, which is one of their TV shows, and they used AI to generate a battle scene, for example. But when it comes to India and the billions made, when it comes to local and original content, it will really get these creatives to assess all parts and phases of the production, whether it's the pre-production side, such as storyboarding, creating virtual sets, to even the virtual, special effects during post. So far, Amazon is seeing efficiencies in reduction of timelines to 20 to 25%. And this is great news for shows that require tight turnaround, for example. As for the mid-sized sort of production houses or the indie producers, this is great in creating those kind of epic scenes that are similar to like Dune or Game of Thrones. And it can now be done at a fraction of the cost.
Wow. And moving on to further news, and of course the Disney $1 billion deal with OpenAI. This licenses over 200 characters from the studio's portfolio, including icons like Mickey Mouse and Frozen. This raises questions on AI-generated content. What opportunities and risks does this present for entertainment giants engaging in global audiences?
Well, they've basically entered into a 3-year agreement with each other. And they are bringing popular characters from Disney's IP to Sora's artificial intelligence video generator by OpenAI, and who are the owners of ChatGPT. Disney want to gain a bit of an oversight, almost forming a committee between these two parties to ensure that their stuff is brand safe. But they also want to do that while harnessing audience interaction, navigating through those, all while navigating or circumventing through those ethics and IP issues. Risk-wise, it could potentially damage the brand if the content that's being created spreads at a rate that Disney can't control. And we've already seen this with some of the past incidents that have happened when it came to crisis management. As far as opportunities go, and for those kind of giant players, entertainment giants like Disney can curate sort of AI videos for their own and operated platforms like Disney Plus, for example. So they can test new stories, they can test new characters, and pass that on as feedback with their content commissioners. And this will now include a layer of like fan-generated content, which can ultimately boost engagement and target, say, younger audiences or global audiences who are savvy on social media.
And moving on once again, Darren, the settlement between Warner Music Group and Suno AI, allowing licensed use of artists' voices and catalogues for generative models in 2026. This opens doors for AI in music creation. How might this influence partnerships and revenue streams in media or marketing agencies?
Well, Warner Music seemed to have come to a settlement with Sono AI, which was once a lawsuit late last year and has now become more of a partnership or a strategic, venture. So the Sono platform, for those who don't know, is primarily used for music creation, where users can create AI music. And Sono, as now with this platform, now get access to the record label's catalog. So these includes artists like Ed Sheeran, Bruno Mars, Charlie XCX. So media marketing agencies could potentially partner with the AI platforms directly for enterprise solutions, as opposed to the traditional route, which is going to the record labels when when licensing commercialized tracks, for example. This is definitely a big win for agencies, like gaining access to cheaper content that sounds similar to those artists, and they are potentially royalty free.
There are AI native socials like Meta Vibes and OpenAI's Sora is reshaping these social networking platforms. As a senior growth director with a track record in social marketing, what strategies would you recommend for products and brands in order to stay relevant and survive?
Well, AI social networks are growing on the rise, putting pressure for traditional players like Meta, who owns Facebook and WhatsApp. And as you can see, it has resulted to Meta creating Vibes. And this is no shock to Meta, as they once created Threads to rival X when Elon Musk took over. And with these kind of new platforms, the kind of point of difference will vary on whether it's the feature, the functionality, or the overall purpose. So it kind of varies platform to platform. Some of them are focusing on the generative feed aspects, while others might prioritize image sharing as their value proposition to rival traditional apps. When it comes to brands and products, they will have a social playbook, which will operates as their brand Bible, and it's to determine the right strategy and format for social media. So they just need to make sure that the playbooks are updated, and are they targeting the right audience and the right platform, whether it's the current ones or the new ones. This also presents an opportunity for servicing markets like Korea and India, and they're heavily reliant on local specialty social networking platforms as well.
Yes, and Darren, virtual or AI influencers like Grammy Spills and Lil Maquila continually become a growing trend on social media, sparking viral fascination, but also skepticism around authenticity in brand deals. So far, does this insight align with your forecast and predictions in influencer marketing campaigns, particularly impacting real human creators and their income streams?
Well, there are influencers now on social media, and they are so realistic, and they're actually made with AI. So Granny Spills has exploded on TikTok with 400,000 and 1 million Instagram followers, and that's just within weeks. Little Michaela, which when I was working once for a social media agency, we actually did a partnership with her because she was one of the early pioneers, and she's kind of been consistent with 2.5 million followers on Instagram. Brand deals that she's done so far has been brands like Prada and Dior. So they're quite realistic and they're definitely happening. And she has been reportedly to be earning $73,000 per post. So that's pretty crazy. While it's inevitable, it has been kind of a trend that's, that everyone has been predicting. And it is kind of slowly on the rise, but I think it's human creators are the ones that would probably hold most of the marketing budget or the social media sort of advertising spend. So they still kind of hold the chunk of it. Where the pressure might happen is it might put pressure with nano or micro influencers who are pretty much on the lower tier when it comes to income earning. And it will primarily be due to cost. So it'll probably be them who might be impacted versus the displacement of the topper talents.
And finally, YouTube's recent 2026 vision was announced by CEO Neil Mohan. It emphasizes AI tools being the key focus, blurring the lines between AI and user-generated assets. Whether you're a global production house or an aspiring creator, what are some of the best practices in managing change driven by AI, particularly in content production and creative workflows?
Yeah, so the CEO of YouTube recently made an announcement as part of their all hands, sharing their priorities in 2026. And the focus will be on AI tools, whether it's for creativity and content discovery. And this will allow creators to gain access to new features or faster production and recommendation sort of tactics. With Meta and TikTok aggressively pushing AI on their platforms, YouTube are desperately trying hard to reposition themselves as innovators in this space. And the key is for creators and producers to really treat AI as a new sort of production capability with clear accountability and what are those measurable outcomes. So best is to kind of have peak campaigns or production assets that's going to be core to your editorial content strategy and see how that might be impacted. So it's assessing those kind of new features once they get onboarded, and maybe select sort of assets that you think you can take a bit more of a creative risk and use and maximize and really value the AI features and see how it would operate using a test and learn environment, and it could be something that you can pioneer as well.
Darren, Nino, Di Stefano, thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of Trending Tech. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Trending Tech. For more tech updates and innovations, stay tuned on NewsX World.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Ellie Richardson. We're taking a deep dive into the controversial Save America Act, a bill that could change the way Americans vote forever. The big question is, this bill is a necessary measure to secure elections, or is it a ploy to suppress their voter rights? On February the 11th, 2026, the US House passed the Save America Act, a bill that demands all voters provide proof of citizenship before they can register to vote. Pushed by President Donald Trump, this bill is designed to prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections. The bill, introduced by Congressman Chip Roy and supported by Senators John Croyn and Mike Lee, passed the House by a narrow margin, 2018 to 213. But the real fight is just beginning in the Senate. The Save American Act, or HR 7296, would require US citizens to provide documentary proof of citizenship, like a birth certificate or passport, to register to vote. It applies to both in-person and mail-in voting. What are the new voting rules? The Save America Act would require voters to submit proof of citizenship and present a government-issued photo ID when casting a vote, whether in person or by mail. These measures are intended to cut down on fraud, but they could also create major barriers for many Americans. President Trump, who's been pushing for stricter voting laws since 2020, is now ramping up efforts to tighten the election process with this bill, accusing elections of being rigged. He's calling this a necessary step to secure America's democracy. Furthermore, Trump's push for this bill fits into his continued narrative that US elections are rife with fraud and in need of reform. It's a direct response to his claims of a stolen 2020 election. But the bill is meeting strong opposition. Voting rights advocates warn it could disenfranchise millions of eligible voters, particularly communities of colour, low-income citizens, and young people who don't have easy access to the required documentation. Democrats have slammed the bill, arguing it could turn the 2026 midterms into a disaster. If passed, states would be forced to change their voter registration systems, creating chaos and delays. While the US is currently home to a record 53.3 million immigrants, the Save America Act primarily targets the registration process for the country's 349 million residents. However, the bill's strict show your papers mandate could be devastating, with over 21 million US citizens currently lacking a British certificate or passport. A significant portion of the eligible electorate faces immediate disfranchisement. If passed, the act is expected to trigger a wave of legal challenges in states with large minority populations, like stalling full implementation for years as courts weigh the new requirements against existing federal voting protections. As the midterm elections approach, the debate over this bill will be a hot potato issue in political campaigns nationwide. What we know is that in swing states, the Save America Act will transform election administration into a volatile legal and political battlefield, acting as a force multiplier. for existing state-level restrictions. In Arizona, the act would dismantle the current dual-track system, potentially purging roughly 40,000 federal-only voters, many of whom are students or neutralized citizens who currently lack the specific documents required under the new federal mandate. In Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the bill's threat of a 5-year prison sentence for election workers creates an administrative chill, where local clerks may over-reject valid registrations to avoid personal criminal liability. Across the board, the mandate for monthly voter roll purges based on often outdated federal databases risks wrongful removals or eligible voters in high-stakes jurisdictions like Georgia, where narrow margins are expected to decide control of the Senate. The Save America Act is now in the spotlight, and the impact of this bill could change US elections forever. Whether it passes the Senate or faces a legal battle, the aftershocks will be felt for years. I am now being joined by Dr. Andrew Latham, who's a professor of international relations and political theory at Macalester College, joining us from Minneapolis. Thank you so much for joining us here today for our episode of Deep Dive. My first question for you is, the Save America Act has sparked intense debates. Can you explain why this bill is being seen as both a necessary reform and a potential threat to voter rights?
Yes, well, on the one hand, there's a perfectly good rationale for it in terms of maintaining the integrity and security of the electoral system. That's fundamental in any democracy, including the American democracy. And so one can make a principled argument in favor of it, but there's also a partisan political dimension here as well. To the extent that it excludes minority voters and lower income voters, it's going to disproportionately affect the base of the Democratic Party and advantage the Republican Party accordingly. And so it's being framed and understood in both ways. A rational response to a set of challenges to the electoral system. It's long overdue, it has to happen. Versus, on the other hand, this is a partisan political play on the part of the Republicans designed to shift the balance in swing states to improve the Republican Party's prospects in the Senate, to be sure, and perhaps even at the presidential level. So it's where you stand on this depends on where you sit politically at the moment. It has to be said, too, that there's very little evidence of widespread voter fraud in this country. So that's a part of the equation as well.
And with over 21 million Americans lacking key documents like birth certificates or passports, do you think this bill could disproportionately affect certain groups, particularly minorities and low-income voters?
Yes, that's the line that's being trotted out by the Democrats and their supporters, and there's some reason to believe that that's very true. The Republicans are responding, of course, by saying that measures could be put in place to facilitate access on the part of those constituencies to the relevant documents. It could be made easier, it could be streamlined, it could be made less expensive. So again, there's two sides to that particular argument. It seems to me, based on the historical record, that it does disproportionately impact low-income and minority and rural and elderly voters. And those tend to skew towards the Democratic Party, although not entirely. And so, yes, again, it's even that question is highly politicized.
And the bill's provisions on voter ID and proof of citizenship are creating political tensions. How do you think this will play out in swing states like Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania in the upcoming midterms?
Well, I don't see this as being, it's just not going to be passed quickly enough to affect the upcoming midterms. I really don't think, because as you pointed out, there will be legal challenges that will take months, if not years, to be sorted out. I don't think that the turmoil and turbulence will subside in time for this to impact the midterms, but it'll certainly be, well, not certainly, but likely be ready to go for the presidential elections next time round. And so, yeah, I'm not too concerned about I am concerned because there'll be a lot of legal and political wrangling that takes place, but I don't think that'll be sorted out in time to affect the November elections.
And President Trump has long claimed that US elections are rigged. How do you think the Save America Act fits into his broader narrative? And what are the implications for the future of elections integrity in the US?
Well, election integrity could be tightened at the margins, but it's not a structural, core, fundamental, catastrophic problem at the moment. That's not the case. This is entirely consistent, of course, with President Trump's narrative around this issue. It's not surprising that he and his supporters, both in terms of the credibility of their claims, this is a problem, I'm going to fix it, that plays well with the base, but also in terms of advantaging his party in certain swing states in the upcoming future elections. So that's the way it's going to have an impact. This is kind of a solution to a problem that doesn't really exist except on the margins in a very minimalistic kind of way. But politically it plays well with his base, and politically it's going to work well to the advantage of the Republican Party. And that's maybe all that one needs to know about this particular act.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andrew Latham, for joining us here today on this episode of Deep Dive. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And that wraps up this edition of Deep Dive. Stay tuned to NewsX World for more news and updates.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. BNP expresses confidence in forming government after landmark poll. Opposition says won't engage in obstructive politics. World leaders congratulate Tariq Rahman. US President Donald Trump warns Iran of a very traumatic outcome without a nuclear deal. He expressed hope for progress in the next month following his White House meeting with Netanyahu. North Korea vows a terrible response to any further drone incursions from the south. Seoul denied official involvement in the January incident, attributing it to civilians. Officials announced the conclusion of the immigration enforcement operation in Minneapolis. A congressional hearing reviewed ICE's presence, while a judge ruled that detainees were denied access to lawyers. Obama says US less safe after Trump reverses Obama-era ruling that greenhouse gases endanger public health. The White House called the reversal the largest deregulation in American history, saying it would make cars cheaper. US President Donald Trump says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should receive a pardon for corruption charges, saying Israeli President Isaac Herzog should be ashamed of himself for not granting one. Russia fully blocks US messenger app WhatsApp, owned by Meta Platforms, for failing to comply with local law, suggesting Russians turn to a state-backed national messenger Max instead. NASA to launch 4 astronauts to the International Space Station, replacing a crew that was evacuated early due to a medical issue. The pre-dawn launch was delayed by 2 days over adverse weather forecasts across the US East Coast. Viewers, we have some breaking news now coming in connection to the Bangladesh. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party has now been officially confirmed to win the election by a landslide margin. Election Commission Senior Secretary Akhtar Ahmed announced the results, confirming the scale of the BNP's majority. Official figures show the BNP-led alliance captured 212 seats, compared with 77 seats won by the Islamist-led Jamaat-e-Islami alliance. Voter turnout reached 59% nationwide. Alongside the parliamentary vote, a referendum on a sweeping democratic charter was also held. The proposed reforms were endorsed by 60% of voters, signaling public backing for broader political changes. Shruti Das Gupta is there with us. She is an international affairs analyst, joins us from New Delhi. Shruti, thanks very much for joining me. It's confirmed BNP has won the election. It's gotten a 2/3 majority along with its allies. But let's also talk about Jamaat-e-Islami, which along with its allies had 77 seats. How do you think Jamaat's resurgence is going to shape Bangladesh polity and its secular structure?
Well, the secular word no longer exists now as part of the, pardon me, the Bangladeshi constitution, because the first thing Yunus, despite not having the power to do so, the first thing Muhammad Yunus did was take out secular from the constitution of Bangladesh. So that was already a mute question. He was very pro-Islamists, Muslims both, and he has said that 90% of this nation is Muslim. So I don't understand why the word secular needs to be contained in the constitution, and that has now found backing. Although not really, as you have just pointed out, 60% voter turnout, and out of those 60%, only 60 some percent have voted for accepting of this new 84-point referendum, which puts the actual number of people backing the changes in constitution to less than 50%. But they're not going to, of course, put that figure out for the world. They're going to say that 60% plus voters voted for the changes, and so they're going to incorporate it. Jamaat as such is bad news for Bangladesh because they have always focused on their Islamic identity. They want, in fact, their leader put out an post that he had to retract, where he compared working women to prostitutes. So that is an idea that you should get on how Jamaat-e-Islami in the politics would then continue forth. They would be very Sharia aligned. They would be very hardliner and fundamentalist, and they would continue to. This is the fear that most nations around the world have now, that with the amnesty provided by political presence, they are going to now continue to radicalize the new Bangladesh, as the 2026 charter would now have it, and try and decouple Bangladesh from its Indic related identity. So they are trying to form anti-India axis and and would try and foment anti-India, anti-minority sentiments within the nation. If you see the regions that Jamaat-e-Islami have won in, most of it borders West Bengal, and that is worrying a lot of Indian analysts like myself, because that means that there are strongholds where brainwashed, very radical elements reside in majority, happen and have sympathy with those particular identities and mindsets that the Jamaat-e-Islami propagates, shows that they are very close to the Indian border, and those Indian borders happen to be very, very porous. With West Bengal elections coming forth within this year, most of India's analysts are panicking what this really means for us in the future. Now, Jamaat-e-Islami is also the group that was part of the Razakars that perpetrated unaccountable violence, rape, pillage, murder, loot of all order during the 1971 order. They are so pro-Pakistan and their Islamic identity that they refuse to have anything to do with the natural identity of the people of Bangladesh. So them getting this kind of vote and political presence is, of course, going back in time kind of era for Bangladesh. They are pulling back away from their identity as a secular state, a place where minorities could also flourish, a place that had good relationship with all its neighbors, was able to do a good balancing act, India and China both, as well as Pakistan. From that, it is on a path which is headlong towards fundamentalism, to pro-Pakistanism, and this is the most dangerous time in the world for Pakistan and fundamentalism and Pakistan-related terrorism to find root there. We have Hafiz Saeed making statements in October of 2025 that the next attack from India will be planned from Bangladesh. That itself should tell you why palpitations are on the high.
All right, sure. Shruti, let's also discuss the voter turnout. 59% is a rather good turnout for Bangladesh. What do you think has compelled the voters to really come out and vote? 3.5% were in fact first-time voters. 8 lakh expatriates have also cast their ballots through IT-based systems. Do you think it's because of the suppression in the previous regimes that the voters now found a chance to come out and exercise their ballots, or what other reasons could have contributed?
I think the women voters were compelled to come out and vote. They're generally very blasé about going through their daily lives, and election day is just a blip in their lives. But I think the women voters were part of the reason why BNP has won with such a landslide victory, because of the statements made by Jamaat-e-Islami ensured that people came out and voted against that statement, if not for BNP. The other part is that the first-time voters that you said, that the student-led revolution has inspired a lot of first-time voters to come out and participate in the democratic process. So that is why we've seen a higher turnout ratio as well. The 40% turnout in the earlier 2024 election, where Sheikh Hasina claimed victory, was probably incumbency level voter turnout, where they felt that she's going to win any which way, whether I cast my vote or not. So that is a sentiment that people generally harbor when they feel their voter franchise does not really matter much. But here, the threat was very real. If they wanted their voice heard, whether as an opposition to what the Jamaat-e-Islami are saying, or whether in support of a BNP, at least, which is a better option between the devil and the deep blue sea. So BNP is the better option. So they have gone forth and voted for BNP. So the voter turnout actually shows that people at least wanted to be heard and wanted to ensure that Jamaat-e-Islami doesn't hold more power. So the chicken neck area and the other areas that we speak of have gone to BNP, which is a very good news in one way for India, and that shows that a larger section of people, especially minority regions, if you see Chattogram area and all of that entire Cox's Bazar in that area, they've all gone to BNP. So the minorities have put their vote forth for BNP and asking for protection, because they realize that under Jamaat-e-Islami's stronghold, they will not find that kind of protection from violence, pre-poll violence that we saw, even post the student revolution violence that we've witnessed. So they're having hope that by showing up and voting for a party that says we will protect all religions, at least even if the secular word does not exist in their constitution anymore, there will be equality for them.
All right, and how do you see the fact that 60% have also voted in the referendum for a democracy? How much do you think that's going to allow for direct US involvement or interference or intervention, whatever you call it, with
that
Bangladesh?
84-point referendum, I don't even think the people that voted for them even knew 10 of those points. So let's not talk about 84 points. So that in itself is a mockery of the change that the Yunus government wanted. There are some positive parts, like splitting the house into two, like limiting the terms of the prime minister, like ensuring that there is the executive body, that is the judicial body and the executive bodies, have oversight and not direct control under the parliamentary bodies. So there are some good parts of it, but the sneaky parts are that before elections, there will be an external monitoring. That means 6 months before, the elected government has to decouple, and external power is going to then regulate and monitor how the elections are going to be held. I understand that Bangladesh is not new to referendums, but this one, it has more points that goes against them rather than for them. And for me, it feels where they've kind of they've diluted the 1971 liberation war. They've kind of decoupled from their Bengali identity. They don't want to be called that. They want to be called Bangladeshi. I think the people don't even know what they have voted for. And when this kind of thing comes into play, that means that external entities are going to continue to interfere in internal politics of Bangladesh. That makes Bangladesh fair game for all future elections, where nations, via lobbying, via external monitoring committees, are going to put pressure on how this entire story of the new Bangladesh goes forth.
Shruti, thanks very much for your comments. Viewers, let's move on and tell you some more details as far as the results are concerned. Residents of Dhaka are expressing optimism following the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's sweeping election victory. While some acknowledged irregularities during the election, many highlighted the peaceful and festive atmosphere on voting day. Despite allegations of vote rigging in certain areas, there is a strong belief that the majority of people voted for the BNP. Public is hopeful about Tariq Rahman's promises, particularly around controlling commodity prices, tackling corruption and driving national development. With high expectations for the new government, citizens are eager to see action on these issues. Let's listen to some of the voices of the people in Dhaka.
তারেক রহমান যেসব আশা নিয়ে মানুষের কাছে যে কথাগুলো বললো যে ভবিষ্যৎ কিভাবে আগামী 5টা বছর কিভাবে দেশ পরিচালনা করবে কথা বলছে, ওইসব আসলে বাস্তব হবে ইনশাআল্লাহ।
আমরা এখন দেখতেছি বিএনপি কতটুকু ভালো, আমাদের জন্য ভালো কিছু দেখাবে, সেটি থেকে আমরা খুশি হব। দল এখন ক্ষমতায় আসছে, এখন আমরা খুশি হয়েছি, এখন কাজে খুশি হতে হবে সকলকে, কাজ দিয়ে আমাদেরকে খুশি হতে হবে, কারণ জাতির অনেক আকাঙ্ক্ষা আছে, জাতি অনেক কিছু প্রত্যাশা করে, যেমন দ্রব্যমূল্যের নিয়ন্ত্রণ, দুর্নীতি, চাঁদাবাজ, এইগুলো নিয়ন্ত্রণ করতে হবে, দেশের উন্নয়ন করতে হবে, সকল কিছু মিলে অনেক জিনিস রয়েছে এখানে, সেগুলোর থেকে আমাদের দিকে নজর দিতে হবে।
We now move on, viewers. There is in fact some breaking news coming in over Thailand. Its caretaker Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has said that his Bhumjai Thai party, which won the weekend election, has agreed to form a coalition government with the Phu Thai party. The move signals a major step toward forming a new administration, even though the official election results have not yet been formally endorsed. Anutin said he was honored that senior executives from Phu Thai party met him and confirmed their support for Bhumjai Thai party to lead the coalition as previously planned. The agreement would bring together two influential political forces, including allies of jailed former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute of Tokyo, joins me in this discussion. Dr. Nagao, thanks very much for joining us. What really does Anutin's election mean for Thailand and the world?
In case of Thailand, always three party divided, and no party can get the majority. So coalition is matter, but who ally with who is indeed very important in this case. Because before the election, the most popular party in the survey was People's Party, the current opposition party. But that People's Party has some problem in Thailand because they want to reform the royal system in Thailand. This was taboo. So that's why the view from the military-led ruling party or view from the traditional taxing support party, view from these two parties, which do not want to touch the royal system in Thailand, this People's Party is one kind of the dangerous party. So that's why this time they allied and to form the coalition government against this People's Party. But at the same time, that has just started the negotiation to form the coalition government. If this negotiation will fail, of course there's a possibility, another choice they need to seek. In this case, this is uncertain. But view from the current situation, which the ruling party is the biggest, not majority but biggest, and taxing rate party is lesser than 1/3, but still the third largest party in the parliament. In this case, biggest and third largest can ally against the second largest party could happen. That is true.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thanks very much for your comments. Do continue to stay on with us. Viewers, another breaking news coming in now. The Kremlin has responded to speculation about Russia's use of the US dollar, stating that Russia did not choose to stop using the currency, but rather the US restrictions prompted that shift. Russian officials also said discussions about competing currencies will likely remain stalled until the Ukraine conflict is resolved. Furthermore, the Kremlin addressed recent reports about a potential US-Russia economic pact, confirming Moscow's interest in cooperation with US companies, some of which are eager to return to the Russian market. The Kremlin also noted that a new round of peace talks concerning Ukraine is set to take place next week. And now moving ahead, viewers, a Russian drone attack has killed one person and injured 6 others at a port in Ukraine's Odessa region, according to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Oleksiy Kuleba. The attack, which targeted port and railway infrastructure, also caused significant damage to business facilities, fertilizer warehouses and vehicles, sparking a fire. Kuleba added that the strike disrupted power, heat and water supplies in the region. The Odessa area, which includes vital Black Sea and Danube ports, has frequently been targeted in recent weeks. Railway infrastructure in the Dnipropetrovsk region was also hit. Moving ahead to some news from Germany now. Foreign Minister Johann Wadefull has said that the recent comments by US government representatives have caused irritation within NATO, and the Munich Security Conference is an opportunity to overcome differences. Wadefull has added that the alliance is also under pressure and there is alienation, there is irritation about some of the things we hear from Washington. Wadefull has also said that Germany needs to talk about this in the summit together, and Germany wants to define the common denominators and the meaning of NATO. All right, Dr. Nagao continues to stay on with us. Dr. Nagao, requested to join us back. Munich conference is going to be crucial. Do you think there's going to be any common framework that could be arrived upon?
In this case, absent of the U.S. Secretary, he has a message because America do not need European ally for their interest, and the European allies need America for their interest. But that is the perception of the United States we want to send as a message. So that's why, without something evidence, the U.S. involvement in Europe is America's interest. America do not have will to join deeply. So, because the perception of the U.S. side is this is wasting money. So that's why the European side need to prove the U.S. involvement in Europe and cooperate with NATO is beneficial, the view from the U.S. interest. That is needed recently. So that's why they try to prove, for example, the increasing defense budget to the 5% of the GDP, and the European shares the security burden. And in this case, U.S. involvement could be minimum. So that's why cooperate with the U.S. If this size is minimum, European can say this is beneficial and cost effective for the United States. The interesting part is this is not purely related to defense and security. Indeed, there is a possibility this is related with right and left politically. So because the European government shares liberal rule-based order, something like that, and the current American government do not like this kind of the idea itself. So because of the ideologies gap between Europe and the United States, U.S. government's image toward Europe is not good. Of course, the U.S. want to focusing on China or Western American continent, so that's why Europe is the second priority or third priority. That is true. But at the same time, this ideology, right or left, is also affecting this situation. So European side faced some difficulty to prove that the involvement in Europe is beneficial for the United States. So because of this is not just the issue of defense and security, this is the issue of the ideology. So that is the current situation they're facing. So Europeans want to say, want to complain about the U.S. attitude. And that's why the foreign minister of Germany revealed his opinion in this place. And but this kind of remark makes more frustration between U.S. and Europe. That could happen.
Right, Dr. Nagao, once again, thanks very much. Request you to stay on once again. Viewers, let's tell you some more details that are now coming in connection to the Epstein files. Now, the newly released U.S. Justice Department files are revealing that Dr. Mehmet Oz, the former celebrity physician and Donald Trump's administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, invited Jeffrey Epstein to a Valentine's Day party in 2016. The email sent by Oz and his wife came nearly a decade after Epstein's first sex crime charges. Though Oz is not accused of wrongdoing, the documents show other interactions, including a 2016 email with Epstein and an event invitation in 2014 where Oz was a speaker. Epstein died in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. All right. Request Dr. Nagao to join us and give his comments on the new revelations and resignations that are being triggered Ruemmler, Goldman Sachs top executive, has just tendered her resignation. We are also now picking up names of Mohammed Oz, who's been named the top physician again in the US. How do you respond to all these figures being named, and how do you think investigation against them could proceed after all these years?
This issue is under investigation, so that's why the one by one, step by step information is revealing. And because of the Epstein, the wide human connection, so that's why it is expanding and escalating. So that's why day by day, it's a new name we can find, and scandal itself is expanding. But at the same time, how deep involvement with the crime Epstein committed is a matter indeed, because just joining the party or just meeting with Epstein is not a crime. Crime is he involved human trafficking or other many violation of the rule. It's a matter, but most of the guests in the party hasn't realized such kind of crime, or even if they identify, but they haven't committed. So many people think that they are not perpetrator of the Epstein crime, but it could be the scandal. So that's why, without a total investigation or total information published by something trustworthy official, how wide the scandal or how big the incident is not still clear. So, so this is under the process of the escalating, but at the same time, this is still just a gossip. And if this foreign spy intelligence service involved this issue, it could be the national security issue. But until now, so far, still this is under investigation.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thanks very much then for joining us with your comments on all these discussions. And viewers, let's move ahead now. Beijing has urged Tokyo to protect the rights and safety of the Chinese crew members after Japanese authorities seized a Chinese fishing boat and arrested its captain in waters near Japan. The incident took place off Nagasaki, where Japanese officials say the vessel failed to stop for inspection in Japan's exclusive economic zone and was subsequently detained. China's foreign ministry spokesperson called on Japan to strictly respect the China-Japan Fisheries Agreement, enforce laws fairly, and ensure the safety and legitimate rights of the Chinese crew. Let's listen in.
政府一贯要求中国的渔民依法依规作业，同时坚决维护中国渔民的合法权益。希望日方严格遵守中日渔业协定，公正执法，保障中方船员安全和合法权益。中方将采取一切必要措施，坚决打击境外反华势力的渗透、破坏活动，坚决维护国家的主权、安全和发展利益。反华势力的图谋不会得逞。
And on to some tech news before we wrap up this bulletin, viewers. OpenAI has raised concerns with US lawmakers, accusing Chinese AI startup DeepSeek of trying to replicate models from OpenAI and other leading US companies. In a memo to the US House Select Committee, OpenAI said DeepSeek has been using a technique called distillation to copy AI models and enhance its own training. The memo also revealed that DeepSeek employees have been developing methods to bypass OpenAI's access restrictions, including using third-party routers. OpenAI stated that the Chinese company's AI models, including DeepSeek V3 and DeepSeek R1, are advancing quickly, raising competition concerns in the global AI race. That's all we have time for. Viewers, keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. BNP expresses confidence in forming government after landmark poll. Opposition says won't engage in obstructive politics. World leaders congratulate Tariq Rahman. US President Donald Trump warns Iran of a very traumatic outcome without a nuclear deal. He expressed hope for progress in the next month following his White House meeting with Netanyahu. North Korea vows a terrible response to any further drone incursions from the south. Seoul denied official involvement in the January incident, attributing it to civilians. Officials announced the conclusion of the immigration enforcement operation in Minneapolis in US's Minnesota. A congressional hearing reviewed ICE's presence, while a judge ruled that detainees were denied access to lawyers. Obama says US less safe after Trump reverses Obama-era ruling that greenhouse gases endanger public health. The White House called the reversal the largest deregulation in American history, saying it would make cars cheaper. US President Donald Trump says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should receive a pardon for corruption charges, saying Israeli President Isaac Herzog should be ashamed of himself for not granting one. Russia fully blocks US messenger app WhatsApp owned by Meta Platforms for failing to comply with local law, suggesting Russians turn to a state-backed national messenger instead. NASA set to launch 4 astronauts to the International Space Station, replacing a crew that was evacuated early due to a medical issue. The pre-dawn launch was delayed by 2 days over adverse weather forecasts across the US East Coast. And viewers, our top focus here on NewsX World this morning is on Bangladesh. Bangladesh's Jamaat-e-Islami Party chief Shafiqur Rahman has stated that his party will not engage in the politics of opposition for its own sake, indicating a concession in the national election. As provisional results show, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and its allies have secured 211 of the 299 seats in the Jatiya Sangsad, with Jamaat winning 70 seats. Rahman confirmed that his party would now focus on positive politics. This election is seen as Bangladesh's first free and fair poll in over 17 years, following months of deadly anti-Hasina unrest. Let's listen in to what Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami chief Shafiqur Rahman had said.
আমরা আশা করছি যে খুব দ্রুতই সরকার তার অফিশিয়াল রেজাল্ট পাবলিশ করার সাথে সাথে আমরা আবার আপনাদেরকে কষ্ট দেব, তখন আমরা আমাদের চূড়ান্ত দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি জাতিকেও জানিয়ে দেব, আপনাদেরকেও জানিয়ে দেব। তবে আপনারা আশ্বস্ত থাকতে পারেন যে আমাদের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি হবে ইতিবাচক ধারার রাজনীতি, কল্যাণ ধারার রাজনীতি, মানুষের জন্য রাজনীতি, দলের জন্য রাজনীতি নয়। আমরা বিরোধিতার জন্য বিরোধিতা, ওই রাজনীতি আমরা করব না।
Joining me now in this discussion is retired Major General Sudhakar Ji, Senior Strategic and International Affairs expert, joins us from Jaipur. Very good morning to you, sir, and thanks for joining us. It's a big win, of course, for the BNP, but Awami League is now saying that it will reach out to BNP, and Hasina's son is vowing, Awami League come back. How should we take that?
Good morning, Kriti. Thank you for getting me for your show. A very interesting and deep meaning question you have raised. it will be a welcome development because the present election, no matter what the outcome is, my understanding and analysis suggests that it is going to be a very tall order as far as the staying power of BNP is concerned. The Bangladesh today is not what it is to be prior to August 2024. There are all and sundry who have contributed and made Bangladesh to be a new epicenter of global terrorism. You name any person from Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, ISIS, Rohingya alliances, etc., etc. And if he can pull it off, nothing like it. But one should be prepared for these eventualities. Because why am I saying this? If you look at the history, the data sheet or the CV of Rahman, well, I'm not trying to point a finger at the character, but look at the profile of this individual. He was involved in corruption. There are a number of cases against him. Okay, so, and he barely he managed, while the political front, his mother used to be the front desk person looking after the party. The real power of BNP during his mother's time was wielded by this person, and he is to do it by ruthless measures. 10% of everything. Anyway, will not digress onto the issue. The second issue that I wish to highlight is this point which you have read would contribute towards inclusiveness of the political dispensation of Bangladesh as a country. This has got a futuristic objective, and this will do good to Bangladesh, because non-inclusion of a dominant party in Bangladesh in a democratic form of activity, it doesn't actually pay well for the staying power of Bangladesh as a leading economy amongst the least developed or developing countries in the world today. And last but not the least, there are competing spheres of influence which are intersecting in Bangladesh today. You have USA, you have and you have the radical Islam. The same Jamaat we are talking of are the people who were responsible for genocide of more than 3 million people. They are the same Jamaat who raped 250,000 women and the girl children of Bangladesh. We are giving them a chance to come back to power in Bangladesh. The very generation, the revolution of Bangladesh took place on the paradigm of not two-nation theory. It is the Bengali Muslim. It is not Bangladeshi. Bangladeshis are totally different. They cannot be equated with Pakistan Muslims, because Pakistan Muslims, they have an orientation of Arabic and that of Persian culture, whereas the Bangladeshi, they are more actually integrated with our geography and the culture of India and West Bengal. That has to be seen. They're the more liberal, more Sufist kind of, Muslims. They may be having the religion Muslim, but they speak Bengali. Bengali, the language turned out to be the central point of division, and the two-nation theory was busted with the liberation of Bangladesh in 71. Back to you, Kriti.
Right. What's in this election result for the US now? We already know of BNP leaders having met with US officials. There was also contact of the deep state in the US with the Bangladesh leadership. How is Bangladesh under Tariq Rahman now going to strike a balance between US and China on the one hand, and then also between India and Pakistan on the other?
Yeah, good question again. You see, my take on the whole issue, one has to be mindful of who is Tariq Rahman, the BNP leader. He's supported by the deep state. He's the representative of the BNP, who is supported by the larger force from the USA. Now, what is USA today? USA is a declining superpower. Why has it come into Bangladesh so late? Better late than never. It has come in so as to give a strategic push back to China. Why China? Because China has penetrated into Bangladesh so significantly, it has started impacting the way of life and changed the dependency of the local people. So how are the local people dependent on that? By virtue of having deep pocket and money, today the media says 72%. I am saying 83% of military hardware is imported by Bangladesh from China. And if that be the kind of talk about any infrastructure, $38 billion in past 13 years have been committed, out of which 20 billion or more have been already applied. They have got the dams, they have got the bridges, they have got the hydel power stations, they have got the national highway pipeline, they have got railway lines also, communication towers. The stock exchange of Bangladesh has been taken over by the state-owned enterprise of China. So these are the Navy of Bangladesh is undergoing the process of transforming into three-dimensional forces. Not all navies in the world have got this capability. They have got the submarines docking at, there is a place called Pekua, there is Qutubdiya Chinese submarines. So what more do you expect? They're all around. So therefore to give a push, and also the latest deal they're going to go in for, 11 times the delegation of Bangladesh has gone to China in past 1.5 years, or more than 11 times. They have struck a deal with China to buy that what is that aircraft I forget? JF-17 Thunder. Right. It is a 4.5 generation aircraft. They're getting it at a cheaper price. Now America, whatever it is doing, wherever it is showing interest, behind the official agenda, they have got a hidden agenda looking for defense product market, looking for oil market, looking for pharmaceutical market, looking for drug money and the rare earth element. Here is Bangladesh, which is offering, America is coming into South Asia in a big way, because if you read the book called Monsoon, Indian Ocean, the future of American power, it says in one simplistic statement that the 21st century will witness the global commercial basket gravitating towards Indian Ocean. So what is the meaning of Indian Ocean? It is India as the largest country and all its immediate neighborhood all around. So therefore China, America is trying to make a comeback to these particular immediate neighborhood of India and strangulate India as much as China is doing against us. Therefore, we have to be mentally prepared to fight against or contest, have a counter strategy in an effective way against those three competing spheres of influence. Islamic radicalism, number one. Number two, China. Number three, America. That's incredible.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for your comments there, General. Do stay on with me as we move on now, viewers. Let's also tell you, US President Donald Trump has warned Iran of very traumatic consequences if it fails to reach a deal on its nuclear program, emphasizing the urgency of negotiations. Trump expressed hope for a result within the next month and stated, "We have to make a deal or it's going to be very traumatic for Iran." These comments came after his discussions with Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, where Trump reiterated his strong stance on the issue. Let's hear his statement.
Following your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, has your thinking changed at all as it relates to these negotiations with Iran or the timeline with Iran?
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to...
All right, request General Sudhakar to join me back in the discussion here. General Sudhakar, Midnight Hammer looms, but Trump is clearly prioritizing a deal over a conflict. What's your comment?
Donald Trump, this is my perspective, Priti, allow me, because I'm also a student of geopolitics as much as you all are. I'm joining the dots. You see, Midnight Hammer took place almost 8 months back. In past 8 months, America as a superpower or declining power has gone through such tumultuous journey as much as the world has gone through the geopolitical churn. Epstein file is the biggest challenge before the survival of Donald Trump and his dominance as a Republican. They call it what? GOP. Okay. So So when you besides Epstein file, there are a host of issues. There are 25 seats falling vacant in Senate now. Out of 25, I am given to understand there are 9 or 8 of them which belong to Democrat, rest are Republican. Republicans are fearing that, like it has happened in past 1.5 years or a little more than 1 year, the Democrats are making a comeback with thumping majority in 3 or 4 provinces, including 1 or 2 mayors. So they are fearing that it may be a clean sweep for the Democrats. This is the biggest pressure which is playing in the mind of Donald Trump. The second point which is playing in the mind of Donald Trump is that the tariff issue is hanging fire in the Supreme Court. They are supposed to have given judgment in December. It didn't happen. January, it didn't happen. February. Now we are expecting the judgment to be given on 20th of February because Supreme Court is more than convinced. My internal analysis, personal analysis, I would say, suggests that Supreme Court is going come down very heavily against Donald Trump.
Okay.
Either through silent kind of strictures being issued to him, and his executive powers are going to be curtailed. There are some major steps going to be taken by Supreme Court if USA has to continue to sustain itself as a declining superpower. If it doesn't, then they are actually throwing everything to fire. Whole USA is going to be on fire. There are a host of issues. So therefore, the domestic activities or turbulence which is troubling Donald Trump will always prohibit. This is one angle. Secondly, if you allow me, what is happening in Middle East? We need to understand there are, officially the American authorities have said there are 19 bases. I am saying there are 31 bases, including small, big, this thing in Middle East. Now, out of all these bases, all bases do not have the Iron Dome. All of them have been registered as targets. In military parlance, we call it as registration of targets by Iran. Now, what kind of warheads is it going to use? It has got some kind of, this is a country which has got a largest inventory of drones, next to China, I would say. And the drones have got the loiter ammunition capability, they have the terminal guidance, they can do surveillance, they can do intelligence gathering, etc., etc. They have high altitude endurance drones, they have long range. And what I'm trying to say is that means and methods or the projectiles which Iran has, full of the fact that way back when the Damascus mission, the diplomatic mission of Iran was hit by Israel way back sometime in April last year, they had retaliated for the first time. It is the first direct confrontation that took place between Iran and Israel. Their missiles of Iran, they managed to penetrate through the Iron Dome. Why? Iron Dome is actually cut out. It is, the architecture is so designed that it is meant for short-range rockets, oblique missiles up to 70 kilometers. Beyond 70 kilometers, it cannot pick up. The radar system cannot pick up, detect or intercept any of the missiles, oncoming missiles. Iran as on today has got long-range missiles. It has got hypersonic missiles. It has been provided with a large number of quantum of S-300 and 400 air defense missiles by Russia. China also has sent 58 cargo logistic aircrafts. They landed between 28th of January to 31st of January 2026 in Tehran airport or nearby airports.
Engine has ignited, which you can see clearly there on your screen. And the Dragon spacecraft with Crew 12 is still attached to the Falcon 9 second stage. The next milestone that we have coming up will be the start of the Stage 1 boost back burn. And that burn is the first of 3 burns that Stage 1 has to help it return back to Earth.
We are now 3 minutes and 30 seconds into today's flight of Crew 12. The second stage of the Lone Merlin engine has lit and continues to burn, as you can see on your screen. Stage 2 continues to be performing well with a good trajectory and will continue firing until we reach about 8 minutes into today's flight. And we're getting our first
Dragon,
view.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Getting good call-outs of the trajectory as well as our first views of the crew inside Freedom. A few minutes remaining in this burn before a couple of these astronauts will experience weightlessness for the first time. The crew's G-load did dip right when we hit that MECO or main engine cutoff event, and now it's going to continue to build up again until the second stage shuts down. Everything's still continuing to go well. Now 4 minutes and 45 seconds into today's launch of Crew 12.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Second stage will continue to fire until close to 9 minutes into the flight, which will accelerate Dragon to more than 17,000 miles per hour and place our crew in orbit. This Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space.
Meanwhile, the first stage booster is now on its way back to landing zone 40. Stage 1 is coasting, has already coasted to apogee, and the grid fins are helping to guide it back to Earth. And we've already had the boost back burn, so the next event coming up will be the entry burn. That will be 3 of those 9 M1D engines reigniting, and that helps slow the vehicle down as it's re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Once that entry burn concludes, we use the drag.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
We use the drag from the atmosphere to help slow the vehicle down until landing. And that entry burn is coming up in just about 20 seconds from now. Falcon 9 does have a heat shield that is designed to protect the engines in the vehicle from that combined thermal and aerodynamic loading during max entry Q, which is the moment of max stress on the vehicle during entry.
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
And you've heard that call out. The entry burn has begun.
Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
And the entry burn has concluded for the first stage vehicle. 2 of 3 burns done. Next up will be the landing burn for the first stage.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
And everything. Dragon copy. Everything continuing to be nominal. We're about 20 seconds away or so from that landing burn starting up on the first stage. It'll be a single center E9 engine that ignites.
Stage 1, transonic.
And helps slow the vehicle down just in time to touch down for landing at our newest landing zone 40.
We have just a couple minutes.
Stage 2, FPS has ceased.
And landing burn has begun. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And what an excellent view of Falcon 9 touching down for the very first time at landing zone 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Congratulations, that is so exciting to see. And on your screen, you also have a great view of the second stage continuing to fire. That burn is going to last for just about another minute. And then we'll have SECO, or second engine cutoff, which will occur where the lone Merlin vacuum engine cuts off and stops firing.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Once that happens, the second stage will continue to coast for about 3 minutes while still attached to Dragon until Dragon is then commanded to separate. At this point, Dragon will be flying free with Crew 12 on board and in Earth's orbit.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
And that call out for Shannon refers to Shannon, Ireland, and is our final abort zone in the second stage. Continuing to get good performance. After this second
Stage 2 shutdown.
There we had that call out for SECO and engine shutdown.
Dragon, SpaceX, we have a nominal orbit insertion.
That is great news.
Dragon copies, nominal insertion. Wonderful ride.
Hearing good callouts following
Launch
second
escape
stage.
system disarmed.
You heard that call out that the crew is in a nominal or as expected orbit. So again, we're going to continue to coast for a few minutes after SECO to allow those rates and motion from the burn to settle out. There are some small reaction thrusters on the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion, basically making sure that we're in a stable coast before Dragon separates from Falcon, which will happen, as you see on your screen, right on time. Dragon now flying free.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon copies.
What a great view with the Crew 12 crew on board Dragon Freedom separating from Falcon 9's second stage.
Dragon Freedom, Chief Engineer, Jessica, Jack, Sophie, Andre, welcome to orbit. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon 9. Dragon will take you from here. Over to our launch director for a few words.
It turns out Friday the 13th is a very lucky day. Jessica, Jack, Sophie, Andre, it's been a pleasure training with you and preparing for your flight. From the entire Falcon launch team, thank you, good luck, and Godspeed to the crew of Freedom.
Thank you, team. That was quite a ride. Thank you, SpaceX, Falcon 9, and NASA teams. We have left the Earth, but the Earth has not left us. When we gaze at our planet from above, it is immediately clear that everything is interconnected. The vast oceans, the continuous land masses, and all that they contain. We are one humankind here on our shared home planet. This becomes self-evident as astronauts peering down from above, and is a sentiment that would serve us all well to remember back on the ground. We see the thin, tenuous band of an atmosphere solely responsible for supporting all life on this planet, and we know that it is utterly unique, fragile, and must be protected. To those supporting and watching our journey, please know that your spirit travels with us, stitched into the very fabric of all that we do. We hope that our arrival in space reminds all of you that dreams truly can become reality, given dedication, perseverance, and yes, a bit of luck along the way. Crew 12 is grateful and ready for the journey ahead. We're on our way. Andre?
Центр управления, экипаж, Dragon Freedom на связи. Мы на целевой орбите. Все системы работают штатно. С этой высоты наша Земля выглядит невероятно хрупкой и целостной. Здесь не видно границ. Только тонкая голубая линия атмосферы, которая защищает все живое. Именно этот вид напоминает нам о главном. Мы одна команда на одном корабле в планете Земля. Каждый виток вокруг нашей общей голубой колыбели – это доказательство того, что возможно, когда наши нации объединяют знания. Сегодня наш экипаж и эта станция – это результат работы тысяч специалистов из разных стран. Мы здесь не как представители отдельных государств, а как человечество, которое исследует космос, чтобы лучше понимать и дом. Мы продолжим работу на благо всех. Спасибо за доверие и поддержку. Dragon Freedom, связь с вами.
Thanks to the flight control, engineering, manufacturing, and ground support teams around the world. Successful launches of humans to orbit is a testament to your technical mastery and relentless precision in this unforgiving environment. We fly with confidence because we know that the finest minds on Earth are watching our backs. And I'll pass it over to Sophie.
the midst of this.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. BNP expresses confidence in forming government after landmark poll. Opposition says won't engage in obstructive politics. World leaders congratulate Tariq Rahman. President Trump warns Iran of a very traumatic outcome without a nuclear deal. He expressed hope for progress in the next month following his White House meeting with Netanyahu. North Korea vows a terrible response to any further drone incursions from the south. Seoul denied official involvement in the January incident, attributing it to civilians. Officials announced the conclusion of the immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis. A congressional hearing reviewed ICE's presence, while a judge ruled that detainees were denied access to lawyers. Obama says US less safe after Trump reverses Obama-era ruling that greenhouse gases endanger public health. The White House called the reversal the largest deregulation in American history, saying it would make cars cheaper. US President Donald Trump says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should receive a pardon for corruption charges, saying Israeli President Isaac Herzog should be ashamed of himself for not granting one. Russia fully blocks US messenger app WhatsApp, owned by Meta Platforms, for failing to comply with local law, suggesting Russians turn to a state-backed national messenger instead. NASA set to launch 4 astronauts to the International Space Station, replacing a crew that was evacuated early due to a medical issue. The pre-dawn launch was delayed by 2 days over adverse weather forecasts across the US East Coast. And for your top story this hour, the Bangladesh National Party, BNP, has secured a landmark victory in the parliamentary elections. The results, which were confirmed by 4 a.m. local time, show the BNP clinching 185 of the 300 seats in the Jatiya Sangsad, easily surpassing the halfway mark needed for a majority. Their main rival, the Islamist Jamaat-e-Islami, led by Shafiqur Rahman, conceded defeat, securing only 56 seats. Prime Ministerial contender Tariq Rahman, the 60-year-old son of former Prime Minister Khalida Zia, has seen leaving his office surrounded by supporters celebrating the win. Let's hear from the supporters of the BNP as they celebrate this monumental moment.
I came here to celebrate this occasion. It's a great victory. I am the great fan of Mr. Tariq Zia. So I come here to see him here after this win.
Basically, I mean, it's a fascinating moment for us because after 17 years, we got the opportunity to vote, and we could vote for the candidates of the party which we love.
Of course, he's the greatest leader we could ever ask for, and I don't know. I really hope he is the change that we were looking for after whatever happened in July.
Now let's also turn to Thomas Keane, senior consultant of the International Crisis Group, who shared his thoughts on the election results. Keane has highlighted the importance of having an opposition in Parliament, noting that the result is beneficial for democracy in Bangladesh. He has also pointed out that Tariq Rahman faces the challenge of implementing his policy platform while dealing with the post-election turmoil. Let's listen in to his comments.
Result is good for democracy in Bangladesh. I mean, it's important that there is an opposition in the parliament. At the same time, the BNP does have a decent, mandate to implement its policy platform. The key challenge is managing the kind of macroeconomic stability, but making sure that the economy is delivering on the aspirations of Bangladeshis. Sheikh Hasina's failure to do that was a key reason why she was forced from office. If the economy hadn't been in such a bad state, it would have been, I think, very unlikely to see the mass kind of mobilization against her.
We are now being joined by Major General Gigi Dwivedi, who is a war veteran and a professor of international relations, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What factors are analysis citing to argue that the election results are positive for Bangladesh's political stability and the future?
Well, Ellen, I think there are a couple of factors which would indicate that the results are positive. First and foremost, BNP, that is the Bangladesh National Party, which in its mandate had promised that it will bring back the democratic norms, back on the track. Well, that means that the mandate by the people is in favor of the democratic forces rather than the Islamist agenda which the Jamaati had portrayed. The second point is the victory, the margin of victory. That means it will be a stable government because they are almost headed for a 2/3 majority, and that means that the numbers are with the BNP, and they would be able to pursue their agenda both in the economic, foreign policy and the other domains. And thirdly, as far as the Tariq Rahman, he had made a couple of statements, and he said that it will be Bangladesh first, and he will not be leaning to either of the neighbors, and also he will have to do some balancing act as far as the major powers are concerned, because right now there is a power play going on in Bangladesh. So if you put all these factors together, this is definitely a very positive outcome, not only for Bangladesh, but for the neighbors of Bangladesh and the region at large. Ellen.
And how could the election results reshape Bangladesh's domestic policy priorities, especially regarding jobs, governance and youth expectations?
Well, Ellen, the point was that major grouse of the people against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was firstly, it was a very authoritarian government. Secondly, the economy wasn't doing well, and that was one of the main reasons that the student took up to protest, because there was a very high rate of unemployment. And the third important factor is that the opportunities that the nation was looking for possibly were not available to the young people. So this new dispensation, the new government that comes in, will have to meet up the aspiration of the people. So first and foremost, they'll have to address the economic issues, and Bangladesh has already signed a bilateral trade agreement with America. That's a very positive sign, because that will give them a lot of relief as far as the economic is concerned, because majorly the Bangladesh economy is dependent upon the textile and apparels, so that will give them a very important boost. Secondly, would be the sharing of the power or the empowerment of the people, because if they are in connect with the people, it's a government that runs, which is closely connected with the masses, that will give the masses an opportunity to be part or be stakeholders in the whole process. And thirdly, as Keane had mentioned, that opposition is very important for any democratic system. So they have an opposition, though Jamaatis have only got 70 seats, but that is a viable opposition as far as the democratic systems are concerned. And the fourth point will be how exactly the BNP and its leadership plays out, both in the internal dimension and on the external policies, will actually determine how successful would the government be. So all I can say is winning election is one part of it, but the real process or the real challenge starts when you begin to run the government. Now that's the challenge. We'll have to see how far BNP is able to deliver to the aspiration of the people of Bangladesh added.
Thank you so much, Major General Gigi Davidi, for joining us here today on NewsX World. In a recent post on X, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has shared his delight in speaking with Tariq Rahman, congratulating him on his remarkable victory in the Bangladesh elections. Modi has also reaffirmed India's commitment to the peace, progress and prosperity of both countries, noting the deep-rooted historical and cultural ties between the two nations. Ukraine's foreign minister said that China could play a key role in moving towards a just peace in Ukraine. The FM shared that he has invited China's foreign minister to visit Ukraine, while also receiving an invitation to visit China in return. He believes that China can help bring a fair resolution to the conflict. This diplomatic exchange comes at a time when both nations are looking for ways to address the ongoing war in Ukraine and move closer to a peace agreement. Ukraine's foreign minister expressed hope that China's influence could help mediate a peace deal, furthering diplomatic relations between the countries. In Munich today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced significant steps towards enhancing security for both Ukraine and Europe. Among the key developments is the launch of the first joint Ukrainian-German drone production enterprise. The move is part of a broader agenda that includes bilateral and multilateral meetings aimed at strengthening security cooperation across the continent. Zelensky emphasized the need for increased joint production, greater resilience and better coordination in Europe's security framework. He stressed that the ultimate goal is to bring an end to the war in Ukraine through a dignified peace and to establish reliable security guarantees for both Ukraine and all of Europe. Zelensky assured that these efforts will ensure no European country feels vulnerable or left unprotected. The US Department of Justice has moved to drop charges against two men arrested in connection with the January shooting of Venezuelan immigrant Julio Cesar Sosa Celis by ICE officers in Minneapolis. The decision comes after the discovery of new evidence that contradicted previous allegations. The incident occurred during a targeted immigration enforcement operation under President Donald Trump's administration. ICE officers initially pursued Sosa Celis, mistakenly identifying him as the driver of a vehicle involved in a traffic stop. However, an FBI affidavit revealed that Sosa Celis was not driving and that confrontation escalated when the men allegedly struck the officer with a broom and a shovel. The DOJ's move to dismiss the charges with prejudice prevents them from being reintroduced in the future. We are now being joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratna, who is an international affairs expert joining us from Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What does the DOJ's decision to drop these charges tell us about how solid the government's original case was?
Really, what has happened is there has been a review of the case, and the FBI investigation very clearly shows that the alleged attackers dropped their broom and shovel when they saw the officers of the immigration. And so based on the new discovery, the US Department of Justice has dropped the charges. It demonstrates that the Americans, when they find new evidence, they will review it and they will make a decision. This is good for the reputation of the United States. It's very good for the reputation of the FBI, US Department of Justice, and even the immigration authorities. So when there are such incidents and such events, it is so important for everyone to cooperate and collaborate and base their judgment, base their decision on the most recent material evidence, and that is what the Americans have done.
And does this move reflect problems in how ICE and DHS handle enforcement operations and investigations?
It reflects that there was very significant pressure on the part of those American law enforcement officers to crack down on immigration. But it also reflects that the US system is a very solid, very robust system. It is driven by rules, and that there has been no compromise. When they received new evidence, they decided to drop those charges because the previous charges were based on evidence that was not solid.
And could dropping the charges influence broader debates over immigration policy and the use of force?
Certainly, it will result in a review, and I believe that this is a very good message for everyone, that they need to be cautious in their operations, in their decisions.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will be back with you very shortly. Some breaking news now. Judge Dame Victoria Sharp has said that Palestine Action's co-founder has won a legal challenge over the group's ban as a terrorist organisation on 2 grounds. But Palestine Action will remain banned to allow further arguments and to give the government time to consider an appeal. Meanwhile, Huda Amouri has launched the legal action after then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's decision to proscribe the group, which came into force on the 5th of July last year. The law change put Palestine Action on the same legal footing as the likes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda are making membership or support for. The group in a crime punishable for up to 14 years in prison. Even wearing a t-shirt or carrying a sign with the group's name on it can attract a maximum 6-month sentence. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is set to meet Marco Rubio in Munich to discuss Greenland. As leaders gather for the Munich Secretary Conference, reports suggest the discussions will centre around important issues such as NATO, Arctic security and the relationship between the US and Europe. With NATO's role in maintaining global security being a key topic, the conference will provide an opportunity for leaders to talk about these critical challenges. We are now being joined again by Professor Rohan Gunaratha. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for coming back. How does this planned meeting reflect evolving geopolitics in the Arctic, especially with Russia and China showing increased interest?
Ellie, what we have witnessed is that Arctic security, or what you call polar cap security, is becoming a very important aspect in the global security agenda. So there's a new landscape that is emerging, new security landscape, where the Americans want to take control of Greenland so that they will have access to the Arctic, because that has a lot of oil, gas, fish, and other minerals. Of course, the Russians and the Chinese are already operating in that area. And with the polar caps melting, these superpowers will compete in that region, especially in the Arctic. So that means the Americans want to have a very significant presence in the Arctic. This is a part of President Trump's agenda to strengthen Europe, work with Europe, but also lead Europe when it comes to challenging Russia and China. This is what President Trump is doing. He has already sent Marco Rubio to have discussions with the Danish Prime Minister. Marco Rubio will announce the American position with regard to Greenland at the Munich Security Summit, which is a very important global security event.
And could closer Denmark-US cooperation on Greenland spur tensions with other Arctic Council members?
Certainly it can happen. Some European countries are disappointed with the United States, but I think they should all understand what President Trump is trying to do. He has his own vision for the Western Hemisphere. He has his own vision for strengthening Europe. In fact, most European countries had a very low defense budget. He wants it raised to 5%. So I think that the European countries will cooperate and collaborate with the United States so that Trump himself will be less assertive and aggressive when it comes to dealing with the Europeans.
And after these talks, what do you think is going to be the outcome from it? Especially, do you think Denmark and Greenland have sort of had some domestic considerations with the US? What do you think will come out of it?
It is highly debated, but I can tell you that unless there is significant concessions made for expanded American presence in the Greenland, the relations between US and Europe, relations between US and Greenland may deteriorate. So it is so important for the European leaders to cooperate with Trump, because what Trump wants is a strong Western civilization, a Western hemisphere to be strong and powerful, because it deteriorated very significantly in the last 3 to 4 decades because of unregulated migration and because of various ideologies that has changed the Western landscape. Trump wants to change all that. He's a Christian nationalist, and he wants to ensure that Europe mirrors the United States when it comes to standing up against the rest of the world.
Thank you so much, Professor Rowan, for joining us here today on News Expert. US District Judge Manish Shah in Chicago has temporarily stopped the Trump administration from cutting $600 million in public health funding for California, Colorado, Illinois, and Minnesota. The judge ruled that these states were likely to win a lawsuit, arguing the cuts were a form of retaliation for opposing federal immigration policies. This funding, which helps support programs like HIV prevention, will stay in place for at least 14 days while the case moves forward. Authorities in Arizona are facing a tense standoff as Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos refuses to grant the FBI access to crucial evidence in the investigation into the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie. The FBI had requested physical evidence, including a glove and DNA samples from the home of the Guthries, to be processed at its National Crime Lab in Virginia. However, Sheriff Nanos has insisted on using a private lab in Florida, delaying the FBI's ability to assist with the investigation. The Sheriff's Department, which holds primary jurisdiction over the case, confirmed that several items of evidence, including gloves, were recovered but did not provide further details. Despite this, law enforcement officials warned that outsourcing forensic analysis is slowing down the case. The FBI's involvement can only be requested by the Sheriff's Department, and federal resources have not been fully leveraged. Nancy Guthrie was last seen on January the 31st, and relatives reported her missing the following day. Traces of blood found at her home confirmed to be hers, further pointing to an abduction. The FBI has since increased the reward for the information leading to the resolution of the case to $100,000. Some breaking news for you. Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein has stressed that the decision to reappoint former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is a domestic matter for Iraq. However, he has noted that Iraq takes the signals from the United States very seriously in this context. Hussein has also confirmed that there are no changes in the plans for the withdrawal of US troops from Iraq, which is still set to be completed by the end of 2026. On the issue of Iran, Hussein has reiterated Iraq's opposition to the use of violence against the country. He has clarified that Iraq is not acting as a mediator in the current situation. Additionally, he has commented on the rise of the Islamic State in Syria, stating that the group has become very active in recent times, particularly following clash between the Syrian government and Kurdish-backed SDF forces. Iraq is facing challenges in handling the influx of Islamic State prisoners, with Hussein calling for more financial support to deal with the issue. Hussein has also briefed that Iraq is in talks with Arab and Muslim countries to repatriate their nationals, while European countries have been more reluctant. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things. And
hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Thomas Porteous, and today we focus on one man at the centre of Bangladesh's political earthquake, Tariq Rahman, now widely seen as the probable Prime Minister after a sweeping electoral victory by the Bangladesh National Party, otherwise known as the BNP. This is a story of political legacy, exile, controversy and a comeback that could reshape South Asia's political map. Let's take this step by step. First of all, who is the man, Tariq Rahman? He is the acting chairman of the BNP, one of Bangladesh's two dominant political parties. He is the eldest son of the former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia and the late President Ziaur-Rahman, who founded the Bangladesh National Party. Politically, he represents the second generation of BNP leadership. For years, he was viewed as the party's heir apparent, the face of its future. Now, during the early 2000s, when the BNP was in power, Tariq Rahman emerged as a powerful figure within the party structure. Supporters saw him as an organizer who modernized party machinery and expanded youth outreach. Critics, however, accused him of wielding influence without holding formal government office. His political identity has always been intertwined with the BNP's broader ideology: nationalism, sovereignty, and a strong executive government. Second, why was he in self-imposed exile? Well, in the years of 2007 to 2008, Bangladesh entered a period of political turmoil under a caretaker government backed by the military. During that time, Tariq Rahman was arrested on corruption and other criminal charges. After months in detention, he was released on bail and left for London in 2008. Officially, he said he was seeking medical treatment, but his stay abroad quickly turned into a long-term exile. Over the years, Bangladeshi courts handed down multiple convictions against him in absentia, including sentences related to corruption and a 2004 grenade attack case. His supporters maintain that these cases were politically motivated, a strategy by the ruling at the time Awami League government led by Sheikh Hasina to sideline a powerful rival. From London, Tariq continued to lead the BNP as acting chairman. He directed party strategy remotely, addressed supporters via video link, and remained the symbolic core of BNP resistance politics. For nearly 2 decades, his absence from Bangladesh was both a legal and political flashpoint. He finally returned to Bangladesh at the end of 2025 to his ailing mother, former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia, who passed away later. Third of all, the details of the 2026 Bangladesh election. The 2026 Bangladeshi election marked a turning point. The BNP-led alliance secured a landslide, winning 212 seats in parliament. In comparison, the Islamist-led Jamaat-e-Islami alliance won 77 seats. The results gave the BNP more than 2/3 of the House, a crucial threshold that enables constitutional changes. Voter turnout stood at 59%, a significant participation rate given the years of political polarization. Alongside the parliamentary election, voters also participated in a referendum on a sweeping democratic charter. That charter was approved by 60% of voters. The twin outcome, a supermajority in Parliament and a referendum mandate, which gives the BNP a powerful governing platform. Fourth, key priorities of the BNP and Tariq Rahman himself. With a sweeping mandate, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party has anchored its agenda in its 31-point state reform outline, a blueprint for structural, political and economic transformation. Let's break it down clearly. First, democratic reform. The BNP has pledged constitutional reconstructing, restoration of checks and balances, and the possible return of a non-partisan caretaker system to oversee future elections. A constitutional reform commission and national reconciliation commission are proposed to address political polarization. Second, the rule of law and accountability. The party promises judicial independence, revival of oversight bodies, and an end to enforced disappearances and extra to judicial actions. Anti-corruption charges and reforms and stronger transparency mechanisms are also central to this pledge. Third, an economic reset. The BNP plans an economic reform commission to tackle inflation, unemployment and inequality. The focus includes support for farmers, fair crop pricing, industrial revival, youth employment programs and expanded social protection schemes such as family and farmer assistance cards. Fourth, health, education and youth. The party proposes universal health coverage, higher public health spending, skill-based education, reforms and structured youth employment initiatives. And finally, sovereignty and foreign policy balance. The BNP emphasizes protecting national interests while maintaining balanced relations with regional and global powers. So where does this leave Tariq Rahman? After years in London, he now stands on the verge of leading the country his family helped shape. His journey from political heir to detainee to exile to probable prime minister is one of the most dramatic arcs in South Asian politics. But the road ahead will not be simple. Legal questions, economic pressures, and the challenge of governing with a supermajority all lie ahead. What is clear is this: the 2026 election has redefined Bangladesh's political landscape. But whether Tariq Rahman can lead a country still healing from years of protests and violence and deliver stability and unity remains to be seen. Joining us to discuss the 2026 Bangladesh election and its outcomes is Prashanta Kumar Shil, a political commentator. He joins us live from Dhaka in Bangladesh. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to you on this topic, of course. Let's get straight into this. The Awami League, Sheikh Hasina's party, and the Bangladesh National Party are the two biggest parties of Bangladesh. With the ban on the Awami League, many stated BNP's win was obvious. Do you think that the Bangladesh National Party win was driven mainly by electoral circumstances, or does it signal a deeper mandate grounded in the public's lived experience and connection with the nation's plight?
Yes, it's very correct from the sense. You know that in Bangladesh history, there is two parties very bigger. One is Awami League and another is BNP. And this is very root based after the 1971. You see that. But you that see that the voter also the swing who are the support in Bangladesh only, they can definitely swing to the present election from BNP. That's why the BNP seat you can just it's amazing, almost 212 their seat and their allies, and it's a very landslide victory for that, and this is a very major concern. The people just that there's a 15-year rules from Sheikh Hasina, and he is now exiled in India. So that is some people have just hungry to see that actually the rule of the another party, especially the more like a liberal democratic party. And BMP is the know the way BMP is the very good choice for the people and the voter of our country. And I think if the Aum League is here from this election, it must be demanding win for the in the BNP, because people want to change in Bangladesh history. No parties can, if the democratical system and targeting system is a
Yes.
reflection. So BNP is for major in that sense.
Yes, and Prashanta, Bangladesh's most recent political upheaval stemmed from mass protests, particularly among Gen Z and youth groups demanding accountability and systemic reform. Of course, it led to the death of over 1,000 individuals. How do you assess Tariq Rahman and the BNP's capacity to address the underlying grievances of younger generations, including economic opportunity, the political inclusion, and protection of rights?
Yes, already BMP has a very smart, that manifesto for their election. They have declared there is some several part for the Gen Zs, and already you have a movement from the Gen Z movement. That there is a very revelation from 2024 5th August. So that is happening, and also you have been targeting the Gen Z people and especially the youth group. That is some employment is very good concerning issues for that, because there is an unemployment rate is very high in our country. So this is the very first choice. You have the employment issues, and also the moment is start from quota or merit. So this is a very crucial question. You having to declare the working your environment as a merit, not for the quota system. So this is very interesting, and also that the mass people and also the young generation and women a part of the world in our country. So that is a three combination. You have to drive in the steering seat, not for the particularly one arena, but also touch the 3-1 in one vessel. If you do and calculate in very sophisticated way, and that is your government is more sustainable for that particularly. So you can just and I think Mr. Tariq Rahman is a long time he is in London, and he know that very well and set up, and he have a very good moderate situation and know the what is happening in the world, and just he can connect it and every terms and terminology. I think he's a very sophisticated to young generation to touch the pulse, and also
Yes.
Tariq Rahman daughter Jaima Rahman is here, so having already communicate the young generation the touch what's the happening, what's the crucial, what is the needs and everything. I think it's a very no doubt he can do perform his best because he have he have in a very good directions and having good experience for that. So this is very get advantage for his political career.
Indeed. And of course, something that's been dominating headlines, certainly this side of the border, recent reports documented a sharp rise in attacks on Hindu minorities and other minorities in Bangladesh, including several murders and widespread communal violence ahead of the 2026 election. Will Tariq Rahman's government implement to protect religious minorities and ensure their full constitutional rights and safety?
Yes, it's a very big challenge for the Mr. Rahman. And you know that the history of Bangladesh, the minority, when is the vote is completed or pre-voting, there is some target, the first target, the minority one. So minority Hindus very vulnerable for this election and pre-election procedure. I think Mr. Tariq Rahman, he even knows for that, because he's already mentioned he's in a long time in London. So this is very first priority, and we see that this election there's been several attacks on the minorities, houses, and their lives. So it's very challenging and very much actually crucial for this his political career. I think if he maintain that kind of minority nursing and everything, he will be must be a very popularized for the people of Pulse. And also, there's a very interesting point that minorities Hindus in the present time they have been just voting directly the Mr. Tariq Rahman. They depend that thing other the political party is very safe for the BNP, and that's why people are Hindus are just getting in front of the line and just giving their vote. And I think it's a very interesting part of the history of the Bangladesh, and they have to know the changing the habit, and that's why it must be a very good commanding thinking if you do for the best time for the minorities Hindus,
Yes.
because this is a very high time. You can just and I think Mr. Rahman is do his best for that.
And Prashanta, just to finish our conversation, the man of the moment has spent 2 decades living abroad and leading the Bangladesh National Party from London. How will Tariq Rahman bridge the gap with ordinary Bangladeshis on the ground, particularly younger voters whose political aspirations were shaped during his absence?
Yes, that is, you know that the Bangladesh politics in the past there is some dirty instance. They have been a very personal attack, something here, very tough to actually adjusting. I think Mr. Tariq Rahman is little bit younger for that. His age is 58. So, and he have a very pulse connection, hierarchy connection, because people are very used to see that there is a Mr. Jir Rahman, the late, his father, Jir Rahman, and also the Begum Khaleda Zia. She is also late. And there is a two dynamic leader here in touch in the people, and he is a second generation from Mr. Tariq Rahman. I think he knows the past because he is grown up the political family, and he is he knows very well how to be managed. His father managed, his mother how to be managed, and I think he's a very that kind of knowledge adoption, because he is just in touch a family background, and he know ins and outs what is happening to do. And if you tell me that the young generation, I already mentioned his daughter Jaima Rahman is just when he moved and everything with his daughter from Jaima Rahman. So she also communicated with the March voter, talking about the interest, what is happening, what is the gapping between them. I think it's a for he's from comeback situation. He can know everything, and he can just getting the pulse of the people, because there's a long gap between Bangladesh, and he is coming from London. And I think it's a very possible, because he is already grooming and he knows is a political family, and just is a very bridging is not very quite impossible for him, because there is an all of the well set up and well trained, and his daughter is now very very matured, and his
yes.
And his wife is here. So all of this calculated thing, I think, is a very good for him for his future Bangladesh, and Bangladesh can hope a next very fantastic actually situation waiting for that. I think it's a very tragic moment for Bangladesh, and also the negotiating period of the South Asian context is the very, no doubt, is the prince crowns on crown prince for that the situation. I think is a dynamic leader instance. So what is happening? So we are just waiting to see, and Bangladeshi people to waiting after his own oath.
Yes.
And no doubt he is a very mandatable prime minister for our next.
Yes. Prashanta Kumar
cabinet.
Shill, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time here on Deep Dive here on News X World. It's a pleasure to talk to you on the broadcast. And that wraps up this edition of Deep Dive. Stay tuned on News X World for more news and international updates. Thank you.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent.
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. Bangladesh's opposition DNP wins a landslide general election, returning to power after nearly 2 decades. The victory sets up Tariq Rahman to become Prime Minister as the country emerges from months of unrest and economic disruption. Meanwhile, Bangladesh's Jamaat-e-Islami raises serious questions about the integrity of the election results, a day after rivals claim a decisive win. As results are still pending, India and Pakistan's prime ministers congratulate DNP leader Tariq Rahman on his victory. 3 brothers, including an 8-year-old, are killed near Ukraine's eastern front line, while a Russian drone strike kills 1 and injures 6 in a Black Sea port near Odessa. Officials say the boy's mother and grandmother are wounded, with emergency infrastructure in Odessa also badly damaged. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney will attend a vigil in Tumbler Bridge, British Columbia, where 9 people were killed in a mass school shooting just a couple of days ago. The visit comes as the country grieves one of its worst gun attacks in recent years. The United States is sending a second aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, to the Middle East amid rising tensions with Iran. The move will reinforce the USS Abraham Lincoln, already in the region, as President Trump says a deal with Tehran could come within a month. Japan seizes a Chinese fishing boat and arrests its captain after officials say the vessel fled inspection inside Japan's exclusive economic zone off Nagasaki. The move is likely to further heighten tensions between Tokyo and Beijing. Thailand's Boom Jae Thai party will form a coalition government with Pheu Thai after winning a clear majority in Sunday's general election. Boom Jae Thai secures 193 out of 500 seats ahead of the People's Party and Pheu Thai, consolidating its hold on power. North Korea threatens a terrible response if more drones cross the border from the south. Pyongyang issues the warning amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. Those are the headlines of the hour, but we start in Europe with some breaking news. And the next round of Russia-US-Ukraine talks will take place on February the 17th to the 18th in Geneva, according to RIA. Territory remains the main issue in the talks, with Russia demanding control over the entire Donbass region, a point Ukraine refuses to concede. Reports suggest that the US has made it clear that it will not finalize security guarantees for Ukraine until a general agreement is reached to end the war. While there has been some progress on a ceasefire and demilitarized zone, reports suggest that key issues such as Ukraine's territorial integrity and the presence of Western troops remain unresolved. We'll bring you all of the updates coming out of those talks when they start, but to gear us up for them is Dr. Gilbert Doctorow, who joins us in this discussion. He's a Russian affairs expert. He joins us live from Brussels. Gilbert, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. We've seen those past trilateral talks, the last round of which took place on the 4th and the 5th of this month, and now we're getting another in the same location come the 17th. So, do you have hopes for these talks, first of all, since all the developments, mainly on the ground, which have happened since the second round, which we saw? Of course, we've seen an assassination attempt of a Russian lieutenant general. We've seen, of course, cross-border aerial strikes from each side, and Russia makes subtle gains in the Ukrainian Donbass. Your hopes for this third round?
Well, if the sides remain as far apart as they are, according to your very correct description 2 minutes ago, then there will be no peace settlement brokered by Mr. Trump, and very likely Mr. Trump will leave the process, will wash his hands of Ukraine and Russia making peace no later than the middle of May, which he set as a deadline for their concluding a peace treaty, in keeping with America's political calendar and ending this well before the midterm elections heat up. The interesting thing is that you mentioned in passing that these coming talks will be in Abu Dhabi. Let us recall that the day after the General Alexeyev was attacked in Moscow and almost killed, a day after that, Mr. Zelensky said, "No way will we return to Abu Dhabi. It's unacceptable. We want the talks to go to Miami." The reason for that was Abu Dhabi had turned over the suspect, the gunman, soon after he arrived there from Moscow. and he was returned directly to Moscow, and where he was subjected to very mild, say, interrogation. I say mild because when he was shown on television shortly afterwards, there were no marks, signs of bruises on him. As it sometimes happens in the past when murderers are taken into interrogation in Russian, and not only in Russian intelligence agency offices. Well, anyway, he was returned. Mr. Zelensky understood that the game was up, that his direct involvement, the Ukrainians' direct involvement in hiring this assassin would be exposed, as it was. I don't say that was the whole story, but for Mr. I have in the past claimed that the British were involved in this as well, but that's not relevant to our immediate discussion, which is about Mr. Zelensky's reaction. It was peculiar. He seemed to be very emotional. Well, it's coming back to Abu Dhabi, so that little problem has been resolved. But the major problem that you highlighted remains. It's primarily about territory, and it is the way Mr. Zelensky is being encouraged day by day by the Europeans, who are the war party here, and who want to give him every assurance that he will get support as he continues the war for another couple of years for the sake of Europe's remilitarization. So there's the situation in a nutshell. Given the support he's getting from Europe, it's hard to conceive that Mr. Zelensky will make compromises that many of his colleagues would like him to make, even Mr. Badanov, who is nominally in charge of negotiations in Abu Dhabi, to make the territorial concessions.
Gilbert, do stay with us. We do have now a confirmation coming in from the Kremlin that has also confirmed the next round of peace talks on Ukraine will take place next week. And according to 3 sources familiar with the matter, US officials have proposed holding a trilateral meeting. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that Moscow and Washington have been engaging in discussions about bilateral trade and economic cooperation. However, Peskov also noted that any meaningful progress in these discussions is unlikely until the ongoing conflict in Ukraine is resolved. Amid growing tensions, Ukraine has raised concerns that the US is ramping up pressure for concessions in order to facilitate a peace agreement by early summer, with upcoming midterm elections influencing the push for a resolution. Gilbert, in terms of these trilateral talks, I believe, if my memory, if I trust my memory, that you were positive at one point. Now, this may have been in between the first and the second round, that a talk could, a peace deal, or at least a ceasefire, could have been reached temporarily, or we could have seen peace on the ground at least temporarily in this. What changed?
Well, the German changes almost every day. Mr. Trump's position is reported variably from day to day. One moment he is supposed to be in Mr. Putin's pocket. The next moment we see him confirming draconian sanctions on Russia. They say he's now favoring Mr. Zelensky. So it is very difficult to maintain a consistent position as an outside observer when the facts in front of us are changing. However, I do believe that Mr. Trump is in earnest in wishing this over for reasons that have little to do with humanitarian concerns, but with his own political agenda and his hope to reach a working relationship with Russia that makes it possible for him to oversee the creation of a new world order of spheres of influence in which the great powers are working in amity after having settled the questions of who owns what. So there, Mr. Trump is in favor of it. Mr. Zelensky is clearly being incited. He has been encouraged by the European Union, by NATO, to resist what has to be done to end the war, which is territorial concessions and change of regime, in effect. It is possible. Yes.
Yes, apologies. I was going to move on, but So, in terms of Peskov's statements there, obviously on the sidelines of these big diplomatic meetings, there's been talks of future, of course, US and Russian economic cooperation, something that Peskov was talking about there. Something Sergei Lavrov said the other day was not really conceivable in any shape or form, once again, until the Ukraine war is over, but he seemed pretty negative about that. What are your thoughts of Putin's envoy's statements there, Peskov saying that the economic cooperation is unlikely, but perhaps after the war is over? Do you think we see any future there?
Well, we have two lines of interpretation coming out of Moscow. One is Mr. Lavrov and his ministry, which has recently uniformly been speaking in a very negative way about Mr. Trump and whether it is reasonable or unreasonable to expect to do business with him. Mr. Putin on the other side, and Mr. Peskov as his spokesman, is placing great emphasis on the role of the United States as the only party that can ensure what Russia wants as its overarching objective, which is to bring the Europeans to the table to revise the security architecture of Europe in a way that brings Russia in from the cold. So you have these two different approaches coming from the Russian government. I believe Mr. Putin's, of course, since he's the president, is the more authoritative one. However, the skepticism spoken by Mr. Lavrov is shared by a lot of people in the periphery of power in Moscow. So it is divided. As regards the prospects for doing big business, economic, I think this is wild speculation. We hear crazy numbers put out that, oh yes, Mr. Zelensky himself said that, oh, the United States and Russia can do $13 trillion in business. This is utter nonsense. The most that was being discussed was establishing a fund of $100 billion, which essentially would be the Russian frozen assets in Europe, and using that for the purpose of encouraging trade. Trade is not a big prospect for the United States and Russia because they have different economies skewed in different ways, and they are more competitors than cooperators. But it's a nice talking point.
Gilbert Doctorow, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time and talking to us. Pleasure to have you on the programme. Now we turn over to the United States directly, and it has finalised a reciprocal trade agreement with Taiwan, confirming a 15% tariff on Taiwan imports while securing sweeping tariff cuts and fresh purchase commitments from Taipei. Under the deal, Taiwan will eliminate or reduce tariffs on almost all US goods and agree to significantly increase purchases of American products between 2025 and 2029. The commitments include $44.4 billion worth of liquefied natural gas and crude oil, $15.2 billion in civil aircraft and engines, and $25.2 billion in power grid equipment, generators, and marine steelmaking machinery, totaling at nearly $85 billion over 4 years. This agreement is expected to deepen supply chain ties and strengthen US-Taiwan economic relations. Joining us now to discuss this breakthrough in trade deals coming out of the United States is Sharad Kohli, a senior economist, joining us live from New Delhi. Sharad, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you. First of all, let's say that back in April, when Donald Trump stood in that Rose Garden and held up that big board next to Taiwan, was 32%. Now that's down to 15, apologies. Is this a win for Taipei, and who conceded more in this trade deal?
Well, greetings, Thomas, to you and NewsX World viewers. Well, from an economic perspective, and having watched Donald Trump for a long time now in his first term, and especially in his second term, I think he's been overly transactional. a practical give and take approach, I would say, which sometimes works, sometimes does not work as well. We should keep that in mind, Thomas. I think a basic principle of economics is that, especially when you're dealing with bilateral trade, is that trade only survives on the basis of demand and supply. I would only need as much as I need. And I would only need at the cost at which I can afford. And this works both ways. So I feel that bilateral trade between two countries, it evolves out of demand and supply over a period of time, and price competitiveness, which holds good in the long term. Now, as far as Taiwan is concerned, we all know TSMC is one of the largest, semiconductor chip manufacturers. There are two conditions that President Trump has been laying down with most of the countries. One is, of course, the investment, that how much investment can the country make in terms of money coming into America. And second, of course, is how much of export boost can America get. Well, I think a ground reality is that American cost of production is so high that even with this $85 billion boost to the American exports to Taiwan, is a very tiny country. It's not a very big country. So you don't see numbers in hundreds and billions of dollars, only $85 billion. But we should keep in mind that even without tariffs, some of the American products that I know, which are in this list, I've gone through the bilateral trade agreement, which has been on the table for some time. But most of these products, even without tariffs, are going to be very expensive in Taiwan. Well, then are they actually going to be? So from a futuristic point of view, it seems good that, okay, $85 billion, I give you an export boost, Taiwan says, and you take, you allow my products to land there at 15%. Well, I think it's going to be more beneficial for Taiwan, if you ask me, than America, because American products are still going to, the cost of production, Thomas, by the way, in America is very, very high. An average 1 acre piece of land in America to set up a factory, it costs you about, I would say, $17.5 million. That's cost of 1 single acre of land. 1 hour of labor, skilled labor in America, is at $40 per hour. So, when you assess this cost, you find that it's impractical to, so fine, Taiwan may have promised investment and may have promised export. So I think these ground realities will move forward. And I'll tell you a very interesting aspect, Thomas, of this whole thing. That countries are committing because they don't have a choice right now. They've been in relationship with America for a very long time. They've been exporting to America, importing somewhat from America. I think the countries are doing a futuristic deal. Let's just agree for now. And they know that, President Trump's term is only up to 2028. He's not going to go beyond that. So let's do a futuristic deal. Say yes for now, at least let the basic relations be there. Let some kind of trade continue instead of halting it all together.
Shard, you mentioned it briefly there, but the semiconductor industry in Taiwan, a huge bargaining chip. How important was that, do you think, to Taiwanese negotiations? And are we entering a new world when the likes of semiconductors and rare earth minerals are like the new geopolitical tool like oil was back in the 1990s?
Undoubtedly, because we saw that when in October last, President Trump and President Xi Jinping met, and China had choked the rare earth mineral supplies to America, which was impacting even the American defense production. Those Tomahawk missiles and so, because you need these rare earth minerals. So yes, you're right. Well, semiconductor for artificial intelligence, data equipment. You need these semiconductors. No electronic good can be produced. No sophisticated electronic equipment can be produced without a chip. So TSMC, we know the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is globally known. It had a hold for a very long time. Now, of course, you've got India and other countries who are trying to set up the units, but still more than 50% of the share of semiconductor supplies is still with Taiwan. So it was only in America's interest to make sure that it reduces tariffs to 15%, because the tariffs were higher than that, then the cost of production of these artificial intelligence data equipment and all the other stuff. Why forget Tesla's electric vehicles? Where there are so many semiconductor chips being consumed. So I think the cost of production of all of these items would have gone up. In fact, there are a lot of chambers of industries in America which are complaining that these tariffs are going to eat away our profit margins, because it's going to significantly hike the cost of production because of the tariffs, which is ultimately going to be more expensive as a raw material for these industries, Thomas. So I think, I'm not sure if it's a win-win deal, but I think the deal is still more tilted towards Taiwan, than the US. Overall, President Trump's transactional approach seems to be bright on the table. Make some investments and then make sure you take our exports $85 billion. Let's see how practical these exports turn out to be over a period of time. I'll keep my fingers crossed, Thomas.
Indeed. Sharad, stay with us as we turn over to our next story and we stay in East Asia. Japan and the United States have agreed to speed up talks on the first deals under Japan's $550 billion investment package, although some issues still need to be worked out. Rosie Akazawa, Japan's trade minister, noted that while the talks are tough and it's unclear when projects will be finalized, reports suggest they're being timed with Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's upcoming US visit to ensure success. Reports suggest that further coordination is needed, especially around things like projected interest rates for each project. Sharad Kohli joins us once again to discuss this. We've seen when Donald Trump inks trade deals, especially straight after those tariffs, we saw a significant numbers invested back into the United States economy from these countries while inking those deals. Japan, $550 billion pledged. We've seen similar amounts through the likes of South Korea and other East Asian nations. How crucial will those trade deals, those investments, whether it be over 4 years, 5 years, will that be to the US economy, and will that set the USA for holding its dominance in the years to come?
Well, we need to wait and see, Thomas, if this culminates into reality, as I said earlier while we were talking of Taiwan, because Japan is going through a very tough time. We've seen the Japanese economy being in recession, and Sanai Takaichi, she's been elected in a very, very adverse economic condition. She now has got a responsibility to make sure that Japan comes out of this financial crisis, the economic crisis. So in that situation, a funding of $550 billion into the US is going to be a challenge. Interest rates, guarantees. There are so many local issues, loose ends, which Sanai Takaichi needs to tie up to make sure that this happens, because America is not going to settle for anything less than that. And it'll have to make sure, as I said, I think a lot of leaders around the world, I don't want to sound, a pun, but then it seems a lot of leaders around the world are waiting for 2028 because an American president, after all, can only be there for 2 terms. And they want to see a leadership change where, these tough commitments can be met, because Japanese interests in America are also very significant. And Japan cannot afford a complete, blackout as far as trade is concerned because of the tariff policies which America has come up over the last few months. So I think it's a very tight corner as far as Japan is concerned, and we need to wait and see. I think the visit of Sanai Takaichi is probably going to be discussed. The matter is going to come up, and the practicalities, or shall I say, ground realities of that investment is going to come up. Again, as far as South Korea, you just named South Korea. Well, of late, when the 15% tariff on South Korea, which was gifted by America, shall I say, amongst the first to do the deal with America, and when President Trump found that there was delay in ratification of this deal from South Korea, he immediately went on to give the statement, I'm going to slap another 10% on you. That's going to make it 25%. So I think this whole game of tariff is turning out to be a game of roulette. How far it turns out, he needs to appreciate, President Trump, that economic conditions of the countries may sometimes not allow them to pump in money at the speed at which President Trump would desire. So I think this forced commitment of investment, as I said, these things are natural. They evolve with the situation. But I somehow feel as an economist that when you force investments, when you force exports, and when you try and force things, because of your economic might, or because of banking on your relations for such a long time, it just may not work for a very long time. I don't want to sound very pessimistic, but somehow I have my doubts if this is going to work out in real terms, Thomas.
Sharad Kohli, thank you so much for taking the time. Great pleasure to get you here on the broadcast for those economic issues. We now turn over to the Middle East for our next story. And several Palestinians were injured in attacks by Israeli settlers in multiple areas of the occupied West Bank. The attacks took place early this morning under the protection of Israeli forces. In the villages of Tal Fit and Kusra, south of Nablus, settlers have reportedly assaulted Palestinian farmers on their land, leaving several with bruises. In Bethlehem, settlers have pursued farmers and shepherds in the Kalalel al-Lawz area, trying to seize their lands and impose a new settlement reality. Moreover, in Hebron, groups of settlers have stormed agricultural lands, with similar attacks reported in the southern countryside of Jerusalem. The Palestinian Red Crescent has reported 3 injuries, including 1 from gunfire. Attacks by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank have been increasing, with 1,872 incidents reported last month alone, including 468 attacks by settlers. We move on now. SpaceX has launched a rocket from Florida, carrying 4 astronauts to the International Space Station for an 8-month science mission. The crew includes 2 US NASA astronauts, a French astronaut, and a Russian cosmonaut. The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 5:15 a.m. EST, with the Crew Dragon capsule named Freedom attached. The crew will arrive at the International Space Station after a 34-hour flight. This mission, Crew 12, is NASA's 12th long-duration ISS mission space with SpaceX since May 2020. The astronauts will conduct various scientific, medical and technical experiments in microgravity, including research on bacteria that causes pneumonia and plant growth in space. Upon arrival, they will be welcomed by 3 current ISS crew members. We have some breaking news coming in to finish this hour. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has held a phone call with his Saudi counterpart. During the discussion, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has reiterated Russia's stance on the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, otherwise known as the New START Treaty, stating that all questions regarding the future of the treaty should be directed to the United States. He has emphasized that Russia's position has been very clear and repeatedly communicated at all levels, and any further clarification is a matter for the United States. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
we would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian law.
Trump's climate rollback threatens global health. Endangerment finding repeal fuels climate crisis. Deregulation risks climate stability. Fossil fuel profits over public health and safety. Legal battles loom as climate condition worsens.
Hello, I'm Thomas Porteous. You're watching another episode of Explained. In today's episode, let's look into one of the most controversial environmental moves by the Trump administration, the repeal of the endangerment finding. This decision, which undermines federal climate change regulations, has sent shockwaves through the political and scientific communities. But what does this mean for the United States and the world? Let's break it down. On February the 12th, President Trump announced the revocation of the 2009 endangerment finding, which is a landmark scientific ruling by the Environmental Protection Agency. This ruling, which was issued under President Barack Obama, concluded that 6 greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide and methane, pose a direct threat to public health and welfare. The endangerment finding was the foundation for most of the United States' climate policy, enabling the federal government to regulate emissions from vehicles, power plants, and other major sources of pollution. However, the Trump administration's move to rescind this finding removes the legal basis for those regulations, potentially opening the floodgates for increased emissions and environmental damage. President Trump himself called the endangerment finding one of the greatest scams in history, arguing that it was a costly, overreaching regulation that harmed the American economy, particularly the auto industry. His administration claims that this repeal will result in major economic savings, up to $1 trillion in taxpayer relief and lower vehicle prices by $2,400 per car. The idea is that less regulations mean fewer compliance costs for automakers and businesses, and the American consumer will ultimately benefit. Let's in fact listen in to his comments.
Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. Prices went up incredibly for a worse product. This action will eliminate over $1.3 trillion of regulatory costs and help bring car prices tumbling down dramatically. In 4 years under the Biden administration, the price of a new and used car rose more than 22%, all to facilitate the Green New Scam without achieving any meaningful impact on the environment, but making the car worse. That is why, effective immediately, we are repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. This action will save American consumers.
However, this line of thinking has drawn sharp criticism from analysts, environmentalists, and even some in the business community. Environmental groups have raised serious concerns about the long-term consequences of this decision, particularly regarding public health and climate change. For example, the Environmental Defense Fund estimates that rolling back the endangerment finding could lead to up to 58,000 premature deaths and 37 million additional asthma attacks by 2055. These health risks, they argue, are a direct result of increased air pollution and environmental degradation that would follow the removal of regulatory standards for greenhouse gases. The most significant aspect of the endangerment finding was its role in empowering the EPA to regulate carbon dioxide and other harmful emissions. Without it, the EPA loses its authority to set emission standards for the automotive industry, power plants, and other pollution-heavy sectors. This means no restrictions on carbon dioxide and methane emissions from cars, trucks, oil rigs, landfills, and power plants, a major step backward in the fight against climate change. The repeal could also have ripple effects on other industries, leading to less oversight and more room for polluters to operate without fear of legal consequences. Environmental experts and public health officials have warned that this rollback will exacerbate the current climate crisis. Extreme weather events such as heat waves, floods, wildfires, and hurricanes have become more frequent and severe due to rising global temperatures, which are driven by increased greenhouse gas emissions. The United States has already experienced record-breaking wildfires, devastating hurricanes, and historic floods in recent years. With the repeal of the endangerment finding, critics argue that the US government is effectively turning its back on its responsibility to mitigate these risks and protect its citizens. The scientific consensus on climate change is clear. Greenhouse gases are a major driver of global warming, and controlling their emissions is critical to safeguarding public health and the environment. Yet, despite overwhelming evidence, the Trump administration continues to downplay the urgency of the crisis. Climate change is not a distant threat, it's a current reality. And while the administration claims that this rollback will save money and create jobs, analysts argue that the economic benefits are overstated. Many industry experts predict that the long-term costs of inaction, from increased healthcare expenses to the economic impacts of extreme weather, will far outweigh any short-term savings. In addition to the immediate environmental and health consequences, the repeal of the endangerment finding also raises legal and political questions. The decision is expected to face intense legal challenges. Environmental groups like states like California and other stakeholders have already vowed to challenge the move in court, arguing that it violates both federal law and the Constitution. This battle will likely drag on for years, potentially reaching the US Supreme Court. The legal uncertainty created by this rollback could lead to regulatory chaos, especially for industries that rely on consistent rules to plan their operations. The auto industry in particular is caught in a difficult position, while some manufacturers may welcome the reduced regulatory burden. Others are concerned about the long-term implications, especially as other countries adopt stricter emission standards. American-made vehicles could struggle to compete in international markets, which could hurt US exports and manufacturers. Furthermore, the Trump administration's decision to rescind the endangerment finding has sparked outrage among many international leaders and climate advocates. The United States has already pulled out of the Paris Agreement twice, and now by removing the legal foundation for climate regulations, the US stands even more isolated on the global stage. Former President Barack Obama criticized the move, stating that it would make Americans less safe and less healthy, all in the name of protecting fossil fuel interests. He wasn't alone in this criticism. Former Vice President Al Gore, climate scientists, and numerous political figures have denounced the rollback as reckless and an attack on both science and public health. The fight over this decision is far from over. Legal battles are expected to continue, with many experts predicting that this case will ultimately make its way to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, environmental groups and states will continue to push back arguing that the health and safety of Americans should never be compromised for the sake of corporate benefits. But beyond the legal ramifications, this repeal represents a deeper philosophical divide, one that pits economic interests against the well-being of the planet and future generations. The stakes are incredibly high, and the outcome